Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Haymarket Town Council work session for Monday, March 31st, 2025. Can I have a roll call, please?
Casanello,
Present.
Larson,
Here.
Gallagher,
Here.
Hager, Ramirez,
Here.
Baker,
Here.
DNA.
Here.
All right. Everybody, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's wait for the scouts. Let's wait for the scouts to lead us here. Before we get going onto our first agenda items, per our last work session for the budget, are there any objections to adding our conversation about the FY26 budget added as agenda item number 7?
No objection.
Okay, and that is what we shall do. Okay, second. All right, let's go on to our agenda items. First on the agenda is our monthly financial report. So Roberto, take it away.
Good evening, council. Apparently, that's my slogan. Yeah. So on the revenue side, I just want to happily report that revenues are going strong. On some line items, you're seeing we're ahead of what we expected. Interests are doing well on their interest returns. The funds transfer next week, you'll see we made an additional funds transfer for a progress payment for the park sidewalk. That will be in the next one.
What number is that?
That is 4,002.
Yep, on page 3.
Patient.
Last item in revenue.
Right. Right, and we talked about that too, didn't we? A little bit. That we anticipate some savings from that as well. On that
Yeah,
budget number.
yes, there were some change orders, and I do owe you that as finance liaison. We talked about it. Now that the project's coming to a close, to get Katie and I to make sure that what the final cost will be for the park sidewalk, we'll get that back to council.
So is there anything left other than the punch list or?
Excuse me. We have our punch list scheduled. They were out doing markings this evening. And then the lights are up and active. The banner arms are on them. We need to look at the placement of the bench. The street trees are in. So really it should just be our punch through list when we walk it.
Great, thank you.
We are fully aware of one pedestrian crosswalk sign that's in conflict with our pole. That'll be part of the punch list. So it's on our to-do.
Thank you.
Overall, though, the budget, we are in the black by 365,000 currently. I don't know if there's any specific questions on these current numbers. I'm here to answer them.
Anybody?
Signage sale, was that complete or is that just projected?
I apologize. That is complete. That is what the police department sold that old signage for, the message board. 3,300.
Back to the general fund.
Anything else on the budget? Financial report. Financial report. Shouldn't say budget. That's later. Financial report.
Well, yeah, budget.
Okay, let's move on then. Next on our agenda is our draft resolution for for VDOT to accept Walter Robinson Lane into the system. So, Thomas, you want to fill us in?
Yes, good evening, council. I'd first like to start out, we're on packet page 7 with the memo that I typed up for this item. During the big snowstorm we had in the middle of January, Robinson Paradise residents reached out to me asking about what's our snow removal policy for sidewalks and roads. My response to them was giving them what our map was of snow removal, which is the Washington and that certain section of Jefferson Street. And also that responsibility for snow clearance on the road would be the HOA's currently, as it's not a public road. We're still reviewing as-built submissions for Robinson Paradise, so this kind of goes hand in hand with what they're requesting. They just want to make the road public and have this Walter Robinson Lane be accepted into VDOT's secondary system. And so what I've provided for council tonight, we'll start with packet page 8. This is just the form that the developer will submit to VDOT for approval and acceptance into VDOT's system for public roads. On packet page 9, I wanted to give you a visual of the site conditions. This is the most up-to-date satellite imagery I could find. If you'll note on the VDOT form, as well as the satellite imagery, Walter Robinson Lane is a cul-de-sac road, and that is the only section that will be accepted into VDOT's system. The old gravel road that was once Walter Robinson Lane and still sticks out from it, that won't be part of it. There's an old Walter Robinson Lane behind the subdivision with 4 homes there. That is also not part of it. That's maintained by the residents through agreement there. So it's just the one main Walter Robinson Lane where all of the new subdivision is located that will be accepted into the system. Packet page 10, 11, and 12 are just showing those roads visually. Packet page 10 is the old Walter Robinson Lane that's maintained by the residents. Packet page 11 is the road that will be made public. And packet page 12 is the other section of old Walter Robinson Lane that's still paved with gravel. So I just wanted to give council a bit of a context for that. It's just strictly the one road that will be admitted to VDOT system. And on packet page 13 is the draft resolution for your consideration. Our recommendation is that the resolution is passed by council and that road's made public.
Questions, comments?
So
Yep.
this will be on the agenda for Monday.
That's correct. The only follow-up remark I would make is the last one we did this on would have been Sherwood Forest right back here. Pretty standard procedure with VDOT.
Are there any significant additional responsibilities that we take on with doing this? Or is there any,
Not at
any
all.
risk to us, for lack of a better way of saying it?
No, not in this case. So one of the walkthroughs they do is they walk every inch of curb and gutter and the roadways that they have. The developer is responsible for fixing any repair issues that might be required, even just the smallest of cracks. When it's in good working condition, if it's not already, then that's when VDOT will go through with the acceptance. So
Now, do you know, besides the roadway and the curb and gutter, does it also accept, does VDOT also accept responsibility for the stormwater management?
no, that's not something that they accept responsibility for.
Okay, because I'm assuming this has a underground system, right? Reinforced concrete and all that stuff.
That's correct. They're only accepting responsibility for the roadways and the road improvements done there.
Do you know, is that a homeowner's responsibility or a town responsibility?
For,
Stormwater management there?
we'd have to look at their stormwater management agreement, exactly how it reads out.
Okay,
So
If they have an HOA, then they are paying into an HOA and that has management fees included and upkeep.
I'll ask a really stupid question. Where's the water going?
Goes into a stormwater facility if, hold on,
So
let me
is
look at
it-
a
Is
picture
it like
here.
where we are at Haymarket Station where we lease or we have an agreement with Green Hill Crossing?
No, theirs, they put in their own system. If you look at this packet page with this image, and if you look down at the end of the street here, there's a house that you can kind of see at the end. The water goes back down that direction and they have their management system is taken care of back in that area in between 2 houses there. So it's a facility they completely installed with the neighborhood.
And that's the responsibility of the HOA.
Yes, excuse me.
Anything else from anybody? All All right, let's move on to consideration of SCP 2024-001, the Chick-fil-A drive-through expansion.
Yes. A couple of updates for council. The staff report for this starts on packet page 14. I'll describe some of the updates I've provided within the staff report as well as correspondence I've had with the applicant as well as the fire marshal again. In reaching out with the fire marshal, I was submitted by the applicants another example of an emergency turn lane or a situation where a fire vehicle would assist in the bank or Chick-fil-A putting out a fire there. I sent that to the fire marshal again. He is okay with Exhibit 3, which is the hardscape curb that has angled parking, which is a reduction of 2 spaces. Exhibit 3 is also found on packet page 32 for reference. But that particular exhibit would have the hardscape curb, removal of the landscaping buffer with a 17-foot drive aisle and angled parking. I just wanted to provide that comment as that was an update from my correspondence to the fire marshal. It still stands that we would most likely not accept a waiver request for removal of the landscaping buffer per the zoning ordinance that we discussed previously. With that discussion, I met with the applicant. They've provided a exhibit that meets the zoning ordinance requirements and would not require a waiver. This is found on packet page 33. I've printed out larger copies for you to look at as well tonight. Let me go pick those up real quick.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. That says
Can you read that?
bank parking only.
Just parallel parking areas?
Yeah.
Just from the.
Should be 60, just one each.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And thank you for doing this for those of us who are sight challenged.
Yeah.
It helps me just as much too. Everyone has a copy. Okay. So on both sides of it, the first side you have is inclusion of, on packet page 1 of 2 for Exhibit 6. They've preserved the landscaping buffer and they've just shifted it to accommodate for the drive-through lane. What you have from there is a 15-foot drive aisle. More space has been created by reducing currently Virginia National Bank, their sidewalk is a 7-foot sidewalk. They've reduced the 7-foot sidewalk to 5 feet. In discussion with me is that will still meet zoning ordinance requirements for sidewalk dimensions. That allows for some of the dimensions that they were able to make here. Landscaping along the front facade of the bank would still be preserved. So on paper, all of this meets the zoning ordinance. On the back side, you'll also have another exhibit showing emergency vehicle turns in the case of an emergency situation. And so given if a waiver is not going to be accepted by the town, this is the option that will meet the zoning ordinance for your consideration. I wanted to give some updates I did show this to the fire marshal as quickly as I could, given our previous discussions. Currently, the fire marshal was not in recommendation of this just simply because of the narrowness of the turn aisle. It does meet VDOT requirements. However, because of his reduced space, that was his main concern about vehicle movement through there. So those are the main updates I have for council for this application. If there's any other questions on the exhibit or for myself or the applicant, you may ask.
Councilman Passanelli.
Thank you. Can I follow up on the fire marshal that you spoke
Yes.
about? So the area in black, that's what he reviewed or she reviewed?
So the area in black, are you talking about?
Here, on the back side, these turning movements, the fire marshal had some concerns about that.
Yes, so I sent this to him. I gave him a physical copy and emailed it to him as well. So he and his team looked over this and that was his conclusion from what I sent him.
And so this simulates I'm gonna ask, simulates the size of their fire vehicle? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. And so if I'm reading this right, that's very tight coming. coming in and, kind of coming over towards that angled parking, and then it looks like it might even be going over the curb at the north end of the bank.
On the north end, that is gutter and not curb.
That's gutter.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
We identified that within a Teams meeting I had with the applicant, as well as clarifying that with the fire marshal. Just for reference too, since on the fire truck profile on the right side of this packet is 40-foot truck length.
40 foot. Oh,
You're
thank you.
observing.
It's right there. Thank you very much.
Well, it's still fine print even though I zoomed it in. So I just wanted to clarify that while we're here.
I appreciate that. So he's okay with that. You said he's okay with the lane, but he's not okay with the reduced width. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, so as an example with exhibit 3 with the 17-foot aisle width, that it was the curb, 17-foot aisle width angled parking. He was fine with that. And then for this particular exhibit, with the reduction to a 15-foot aisle width, that's where his concern came up, and then that's where his recommendation came through.
Is there anything that would prevent the fire engine from going around the other side of the bank building into the parking lot?
One way.
Is that what's proposed here, where if they came in the CVS entrance, they wouldn't be able to go to like the dentist parking lot like that?
They could go straight through, but right here, this area they're proposing is to be one way. And you also have to remember, you now have the dental office behind them. So
Right.
they need to be able to quickly make access to that building. And so I don't think we want to limit fire and rescue to only have one route to get there.
Right.
So we wouldn't want to force them to have to utilize the
Sure.
area between CVS and the bank, or CVS and the dental office, especially if the fire's on the east side of the buildings, or the west side of Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, if they have a fire in their kitchen, they're going to want to be able to have a fire truck there, especially if the drive-through is full cars. I hope that doesn't happen. But
Vice Mayor, let me continue.
Yep, please do.
So are you saying that this is problematic?
yes, so if you look at that back exhibit, so the fire marshal, I mean, he spoke very, frankly with us. He came in for a meeting, Chief Smolsky. We've met with him several times on this application. He's been very open on it, and we're trying, because Prince William County serves as our building official and our fire marshal, we are trying to take a proactive approach to the review of this SUP. And so each time we met with him, he was very willing and understanding of needing to make everything work with angled parking, the addition of the drive-through. And so when it got down to that 15-foot aisle width, that's where he said, unfortunately, we can't accept this. We need it to be the 17. This is what works best for our fire apparatus without damaging any of the landscaping, the curb and gutter,
Or other
having to go
vehicles?
over the different hardscapes, or just altogether, restricting accessibility. And so that's where we ended up with those conversations with him. He was very responsive in it. He gave other options of previous exhibits that he was willing to accept, but this 15-foot aisle width one was not one he was willing to accept.
I have other questions related, but if anybody wants to follow up.
Anybody on that topic before Councilman Passanello continues? Go
Now,
ahead.
that 15-foot area, go ahead, sorry.
Nope,
No,
go ahead.
No,
I
that's
don't
fine.
even be recognized.
No, you're fine. I
Okay,
was
that
just-
15-foot area, that's including shrinking down the shrubbery area in front of the bank building? Bringing the sidewalk and everything closer to the building itself?
It's more the landscaping and the sidewalk stay in place. If there's an adjustment to what the landscaping is planted in, maybe there's a reduction in dimension there, but the landscaping stays in place. And then the sidewalk is currently 7 feet. It gets reduced to 5 feet. So it's more just pushed back a little bit further into the facade.
Yeah.
But the landscaping's
but the curbing
preserved.
is going closer to the building to accommodate for parking and the 15 feet aisleway.
So to overly summarize it, they maintain the landscaping between Chick-fil-A and the bank. There will be a landscaping layer there. There is a reduction in the width of the sidewalk from 7 feet to 5 feet. But we go down to 15 feet of travel lane between there.
And the parking spaces are still 17
And-
feet just diagonal, right?
And Thomas, I just wanted to note that you were nodding, but your answer was yes for those who were watching it.
Oh, thank you, yes.
You want to answer? Or I don't.
The depth of the diagonal parking, that's 17 feet?
Current depth of the parking, if we're going perpendicular to the facade, is 22 feet. You're talking diagonally. They're able to answer that as well.
I don't know what the
Well, hold on. Point of order. Are we taking questions or having comments from a point of order with the applicant at this point in time? This is a work session. This was not planned to be to my knowledge, we weren't having them speak today. Okay, I know that was a question. I know that was a question that everybody on council had.
If council has any further questions, just specifically for myself or our town planner, please ask those questions of us. If you do have questions that you wish to ask of the applicant, by all means, it is a work
Okay.
session and we should facilitate that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification, because I know that came up and I wanted to make sure we had that, to understand everybody that what we're doing. Okay. All right.
So I would find it appropriate to answer the question if she has the answer on the parallel or angle.
Okay.
Angle parking, the depth of it.
And for the record, if you could just state, I know you've been in here a few times, but if you could state name, role, et cetera.
Yeah, Christina Hughes, I'm the project manager with Bowler for the Chick-fil-A. I would have to calculate the perpendicular. I know it's at least 18 because the actual difference from Exhibit 3 to Exhibit 6 is that through the process, we were requested to update parking from Prince William County standards to VDOT standards. And that's why the drive aisle is 15 instead of 17, is because the town asked that we increase the depth of this space by 2 feet beyond Prince William County standards to VDOT. So it's more than 18, but I'd have to do the math because it's not something we commonly propose.
Okay, so the diagonal depth is 18? you're
More,
saying?
yes.
Yeah, because my truck needs 20 to be comfortable. So.
I'll reserve comment on what my truck needs.
Mine's smaller than yours. too,
Thomas.
But I got an extended bed.
Quick question. Have we got in contact with Lifetime Smiles or have had any updates from them on the application, or have they, kind of been impacted in any way?
They have stated, I'll say, given our analysis in the staff report, that's general impacts that we think could occur based on approval of this application. I last spoke with the dentist for Lifetime Smiles at the beginning of this application review when it was brought to council. It's still in his mind that he is not concerned with what is happening on the adjacent parcel.
If I can follow up on that, I'll ask the same question about the bank. And I'm asking it, and I'll say it publicly, that I know that there was some folks over at the bank who expressed to me personally at our business roundtable concerns about whether or not they were losing spaces and whether or not their customers would be able to access the bank. All right, they did show some concern about this. Okay, thank you. So I'll still, so I was just being pointed out that there is some indication here for bank-only parking, which I didn't see before. Thank you. But has there been any communication from the bank on this?
Overall, locally, the bank is still concerned with reduction of spaces, concerned with loading of the site. Same general concerns over there for the other exhibits.
Questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we met on December 2nd, I believe, and we had this discussion, right, presentation and all. And there were some other issues that were outstanding, but I do want to ask about the sidewalk for the bank. Now, that's all ADA compliant, even with the reduction of the width, right?
Correct.
Okay, correct.
Yes.
Very good. What about the signage? I believe we talked about internal wayfinding signage, and I think you have something in here, if I'm not mistaken, in the report. Is that correct?
Yes, there is a proposed signage plan. It's on packet page for wayfinding. It's on packet page 40.
Packet page.
It does show just the original proposed SUP, but I do think through all exhibits, the wayfinding proposed will apply to this.
Okay. So, okay. So you have the flow, the wayfinding signage is going to help with the traffic flow through the parking lot for Chick-fil-A into the double lane if it's approved. And when they come out, they're going to be making a right only or a left only on that? Do you know? When,
It's a stop, so they'll be merged to one beyond that, and then they can left or right, but we do have wayfinding signage to let them know where they may intend to go, the best way to go. Do they
Right, so-
turn right or left depending on their ultimate destination?
and this is a comment for staff and maybe the police department. I mean, we know we have some real challenges coming out of Chick-fil-A, folks making a left. Going west, going north, going south, by going west doesn't seem to be problematic, but coming east does. Is there any way we could get some internal wayfinding signage to get folks who are looking to go eastbound back around through the property to and utilize the light that's been installed by the developer?
Yeah, that's the intent. So the one directly opposite of the drive-through has the exit sign that would indicate left 255 eastbound. And then also we updated the layout. So I know the signage exhibit doesn't show it, but the exit to the northeast will still be two-way. And so the signage there also indicates left to 55 westbound or right to 55 eastbound Crossroads Village in order to direct them to that light.
Okay. And what about reducing, go ahead, you have another comment?
Councilman Passanello?
Yeah.
I think to your point, are you stating that at the exit of the drive-through, if drivers who want to go eastbound or come back to Town Hall, if they want to exit, it's very difficult to make a left out of the properties. So what would be better is if you're sitting in the drive-through, you're not familiar with the area, there were a sign there in front of you that says to go eastbound on 55, go to Crossroads Village Boulevard, out to the light, is what you're stating.
That's what the signage shows. It's a
This
directional
diagram
signage
doesn't-
directly opposite the drive-through exit.
diagram
That
That tells
shows
you
to
to
go to
go-
Crossroads Village.
Right here.
Well, I mean, we would add to it, but yeah, the right to 55 eastbound / Crossroads Village Boulevard is, I believe, the intent for how those would read.
Where's?
Basically circulating them back to the northeast exit of the Chick-fil-A site. I mean, so we can add an interim sign as well. That's not a concern.
I mean, that would be something I would do tomorrow if I could do it.
Yeah, so there's one at the drive-through exit and then one at the northeast exit of the parcel.
Okay. All right, so I wanted to put that on the radar for council and us to consider going forward. The other question I have is, when we talked previously on December 2nd, there were some comments about expanding the exit to the north and maybe reducing that back. In your plan, you're looking to make it one lane only?
No, since that signage exhibit is old, but we wouldn't change any, we would only add to it. So for instance, I know there's some discussion about, the fire truck. The fire access on the east of our site is plenty sufficient for building coverage. So if the preference is for the fire truck, while showing that a pumper tank can circulate without hitting a parking space, if it were to go west of the bank and around, we could add additional signage for that as well. Don, the landlord at Chick-fil-A, have no concerns with whatever requested wayfinding signage that we need to propose here.
So coming out the north end, I see you have a stop sign there. So that would be two-way. That's not. gonna
It'll
be-
still be a two-way, yes, and that was somewhere along the last year, we determined that we didn't realize that this initial application that it was a concern to keep that two-way. So two-way, we won't restrict that at all.
Okay, good. That's positive. And future, I mean, this might be for Don, I'm not sure, but future potential access interparcel connection to whoever goes into the lot east of Chick-fil-A? Is that gonna?
That,
Let me address that.
yeah, that wouldn't be impacted.
Hmm.
This right here.
Yeah, so the current approved zoning, I'm Don Wooden from Mellon Grenada. That is, as part of the zoning, approved zoning plan, that is restricted to one way at the request of the town of Haymarket.
Right.
And that's going one way into Crossroads Village and away from Chick-fil-A.
So that would be another way to get to the light, perhaps.
It would be.
Yeah.
That was the intent, yeah.
Okay, all right,
Intent.
so that would, we'd have to, you would have to consider that in the future, once that gets developed.
Yeah, you've probably seen the Lidl site plan and that predicates the one way and then gives them access to the Crossroads Village
Okay,
Boulevard.
and just one final question for the engineer.
Yeah.
For the PM civil engineer.
Mhm.
So this elevation change, does that impact Lifetime Smiles at all when you're gonna have to build up at the north end there for that second lane, correct?
Yes, and at the time of the initial SUP application, we submitted a site plan. So they paused the review around the first review. So it has already been engineered there, so it is feasible. And then the background for what we have is what we coordinated very long ago. That's what Lifestyle Physicians used or Smiles used as the base of their plan.
And do you know what that elevation change is?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It is a few inches, enough to have like just concrete between the curbs rather than landscaped that would erode between the drive-through curb and the well, it's a manhole there. So there looks like a curb cutout. That's because we're accommodating an existing manhole.
Got it.
It would be just a concrete island.
Okay, all right, that's all the questions I have for now.
Yeah, this question is to the staff. Even taking into consideration the changes that have been made, is the staff still recommending denial of the SUP?
Currently, yes,
Okay,
as is Exhibit 6 now meets the zoning ordinance. Our concerns still stand in terms of what is affected around the site area and other businesses that are currently negatively affected from the proposed application. But as we discussed before, it does meet the zoning ordinance.
all right. Second question. The new proposed changes address one of the concerns that you had, which I believe were increase in vehicular traffic as a result of the second drive-through and also potentially making one of the drive-throughs as mobile through. Is your concern still valid in terms of traffic?
Yes, that is still part of the basis of our staff report.
Okay. I mean, something that I would like to, I know we've been talking about access, wayfinding and so forth, but something I would like the council members to consider. We know the challenges that currently exist with that side when it comes to vehicular traffic, number of trips per day and so forth, and the light. You know, by adding the second lane, which is basically in essence increasing the capacity, right? The ability to be able to handle more orders, right? Drive-through orders, as well as potentially in the future, if and when they dedicate one of the drive-throughs to mobile drive-through only, right? Again, that tends to also increase vehicular traffic. Is that something that we are willing to entertain additional vehicular traffic? And also just keep in mind that some of us were not on this town council, but this body did deny an SCP for a Chick-fil-A with drive-through. Starbucks, sorry.
Starbucks,
Right? Primarily concerns with increased vehicular traffic, right? So I think we need to keep it, in mind. And just also keep in mind that the site is not fully built out, right? There are pads, lots still to be built out. So which means, again, adding on to the challenges that currently exist. So I would like the council to keep that, in mind.
Councilwoman Ramirez.
Thank you. I want to address the applicant. Thank you for hearing our concerns about the landscaping and about the angled parking. It's clear that you guys also heard our concerns in regards to designated parking and things like that. So thank you. I do want to touch on what one of my colleagues mentioned as far as the denial of the SUP for Starbucks. I was a member of that body, and one of the main reasons was an additional drive-through aisle opening up into our pedestrian-friendly town. Here, it's very clear that you guys are not creating a secondary drive-through lane exit. It goes down to one. So that is very clear in your designation. So as far as denial on the safety aspect, I don't feel like this is the same. That's kind of apples and oranges. I am always concerned about traffic. However, I don't want to inhibit the growth of a brick and mortar store business in our town. You guys have been a landmark for our community. When I host Girl Scout things for democracy, I make a map and Chick-fil-A is a reference point. You guys are significant in our community. What I've seen is that you've addressed every single issue we've had to the best of your ability. I mean, you engineered through mathematics how a 40-foot truck can safely fit through the aisle. I don't want to discredit the fire chief, but at the same time, math is math, and that won't change. So in my position, the biggest thing is traffic and wayfinding, making sure that this works cohesively for our community. And I mean, so far you guys have given us answers to those things, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything further? Councilman Larson.
I guess to put my 2 cents worth into it, history, I think our major concern with the Starbucks drive-through was the stacking issues. This will actually alleviate the stacking issues, so thumbs up on that. My concern, though, is definitely the encroachment on the banking property and how we squeeze down to a 15. Diagonally, my truck might be able to get out, but when I park in the Giant parking lot in Dominion Valley, they got 20 feet. And if a car is overhanging that 20 feet, I can't back out without bumping their bumper. So we are really looking at some tight spots here. And that's my major concern, is the tight spots for parking for the bank. That's the only real comments I need to make. But I think when it comes to stacking and moving the traffic, I don't think it will impede the traffic flow as much. And I think that's a thumbs up.
I guess I'll kind of wrap this up, I guess, again. Yeah, I mean, I want to echo everybody from Chick-fil-A from the property for working with us. I know this has been a long standing thing that you've been going through. I appreciate all the work that you've put into it. I kind of tend to agree. I'm concerned. I look at the fire truck, and I know, having a truck, I know I have concerns there, but if a fire truck can navigate it, so can, I guess, so can my colleague and I in our pickup trucks. But I do have concerns about the encroachment on the bank's property, and simply because that's something I've heard directly from them. As the business liaison to the town, that is a concern that I do share. I applaud you for coming to it, with us with this plan. I do think from a capacity perspective, I think there is a reality that, I hear your concerns about the traffic, but I think the reality is it's going to back up no matter what. That's kind of my thought is, with a new child care center going in there, with additional expansion, with additional residents, with some of the stuff that's happening right outside of town, people go to Chick-fil-A.
Sure.
Like, that's where I had dinner tonight. I didn't do that for advertising. I put it back here. But it's I think that's just, in my opinion, my personal opinion, that's just going to happen. But it doesn't alleviate the concerns that I have about the bank encroachment right now as it stands.
We did have 2 meetings with the CFO of the bank, and that's when some of these There's actually, they requested all of those signage to be added. So hopefully that would alleviate a little bit of your concern too. Although I do want to point out again, these angled parking spaces are to VDOT standards, which exceed most jurisdictions. Originally, we were using Prince William County, so there's 2 extra feet perpendicular in those parking spaces. But I think the other idea is by putting this signage, ideally, all of the spaces designated for the bank likely will not be occupied. So hopefully there are multiple options for that.
I guess I'll ask the question directly. You said you talked to the CFO of the bank. Is that person local or are they in another location that is not local?
I'll address that. This is Don. The CFO and the business liaison director, I think is her title, they're both out of Charlottesville.
Okay.
And they work directly with the local branch. So that was a question I had, but of course, I don't want to, address it if I'm not able to. But since we last met, we've had 2 subsequent Teams meeting calls with them, and they had multiple things that they wanted to address. And this site plan 6 addresses those things. So I'm a little surprised in hearing that they're not okay with it, because we've addressed all their concerns. We're striping their lot. One of their biggest concerns was, hey, look, you guys, your customers are parking in all of our spaces and eating their chicken sandwiches. So we said, look, we got that. I've been there. I've seen it. We'll we'll stencil in every space, bank parking only. And so we've addressed so many things with them. And I want to clear up this idea of encroachment. As a developer, we have to have rights to be able to make changes for the benefit of all of our tenants. So everything except for the building footprint of the bank is common area. They have agreed to, in writing, for us to make any changes to anything within the parking lot, in writing. So I'm surprised that we're having these kinds of comments.
Yeah, and perhaps it's a timing issue too. I can tell you that it was a conversation from about 30 days ago.
Okay.
At a business roundtable that we held here. So that's where the comment came from.
Yeah. So the 2 subsequent meetings we've had was about a week ago and probably 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So we've addressed every concern that we possibly could.
Okay.
And again, they've agreed to these changes in writing.
I'm encouraged to hear that. Please don't get my comments, mistaken. But it's, we need to consider, what we're hearing as well.
Yeah, no, totally get it. Totally get it. Thank you.
All right. Councilman Larson.
Question for you, Don. In your discussions with the CEO of the bank, with banks going virtual and a lot of them losing their brick and mortar locations, do you know what their intent is with that lease? And if that lease ends up disappearing, this is just for future proofing. What target business would you be addressing to fill that location?
That's a very good question. One of the primary focuses on us having, the whole area designated as common area allows us to manipulate and make changes for future tenancy. So that's one of our concerns as well. Their lease is, I think they have about 5 years remaining on their first term of the lease. They have stated openly that their business has been thriving here. They've closed their Gainesville branch, but they've remained to keep this one open because they said that their deposits are actually increasing. And they said every time we do something in addition, we add to, we're helping their business grow. So that's on a positive note. In terms of future use, we want to create as much flexibility as we can because we don't know what that future use would be. It's going to have to do with obviously by right uses or a special use permit once again. I think the current is that it's probably under a special use permit as a bank with drive-through. So it would likely be a change in use. Because as to your point, few banks are, doing new branches.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Final comment?
All right, so regarding the potential impact in terms of traffic, right? I understand, again, you're entitled to opinions, all of us are, right? That when the opportunity presents itself to mitigate additional potential traffic challenges, we should act on it, right? We shouldn't be saying, oh, traffic is gonna be bad, so who cares, right? Just throw in the towel. I don't think that's the approach. If there is an opportunity for us to address it, right, to mitigate it, we should do so, right? But again, all of us are entitled to our opinions, so, thanks.
All right, to staff, is it the intent to put this back onto our agenda for next week for a vote?
Yes.
All right. Any final comments before we move to the next agenda item? All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Good night. Have a good night.
All right, let's move on to continue our discussion on SCP 2024-002, Religious Assembly at 14600 Washington Street. Busy night for you. Go ahead.
Yes. So after the March 3rd Town Council meeting, we met again with the applicant. We know there's a lot of questions from council about what does parking look like on site? What would traffic look like on site? What does occupancy look like in these tenant spaces? That's a lot of the concerns that council's shown. Desires were to see how best can this be managed from a parking perspective and visually and I guess traffic coordination wise. We've done our best to work with the applicant to provide some of those answers for you tonight. I will say based on the packet pages, I do have a lot of extra information to give you from meetings we've had today. Okay. But from what is on your agenda already, we'll just address that first. I updated in the staff report, which starts on packet page 44. I wanted to first address some of the occupancy questions that we had.
Thank you.
We met with, we spoke on the phone with a representative from Prince William County's building department just to gain more insight on occupancy for those specific tenant spaces. Essentially, occupancy is a B use if it does not exceed 49, 50 persons. Once it exceeds that number of people, or that's proposed requested number of occupants, it then changes into an A type assembly, or I should say an A type use in the building department, which would require specific or certain entrance and exit points like doors, those kinds of things to allow for that number of occupants to go in there. And so given the proposal, it's probably going to be an A3 use from the building department, which would go through when the applicant say gets approved, they provide a plan to the building department, and there may be an adjustment to the number of doors that could be installed on site to accommodate for that number of occupants. We weren't given a specific number, but if enough ingress egress from the building is provided, there's feasibility for a larger number of parishioners to show up to those events. So, but given if there's enough acceptable changes to the building department from entrances, maybe some fire suppression systems as well, like fire alarms, emergency sprinklers, those kinds of things, because there's potential to increase that number beyond 49 or 50 and accommodate. But like I said, we don't have that exact number, but that's what the building official has told us so far. I wanted to give updates now on the parking. What I had on packet page 59 for your consideration tonight was I had the existing uses at the time. I just wanted to double check tabulation compared to what the landlord submitted. Those numbers run pretty much even in terms of what existing uses are on there and what parking on site would require. Part of what you've received now tonight in paper form is an update to that tabulation. So I'll go into a couple meetings we had with the landlord over this last week and specifically today. We went on site and we looked at if the council's wishing per SUP conditions to mark spaces on site and have those delineated for best safety practice, those kinds of things on site. What number can we come up with? So what you have first is there's satellite imagery of the QBE building. And on the backside of that, there is a sketch of a proposed parking plan that the landlord has given to us. Before the next week's meeting, when this is considered, if it be your wish, before it's considered on the April 7th agenda, we will be receiving an updated striping plan from a contractor that will be more detailed just visually. But what we have here existing in terms of what's marked on site right now, if you're looking at the box section, which would be just west of QBE, you have 2 or 4 rows of 15 spots, 17 marked spots existing by Cookies and Cream, as well as 7 by the front patio of Zonders Taqueria. There would be an addition of 17 marked parallel spots along the south side of that section, as well as 4 parallel spots to the very far east of that, if it is striped. As you go around the back, as you go past Cookies and Cream, this isn't marked on there. There is potential for 3 spots that may go there, but it depends on if a fire lane goes there or not. But I'll keep those for now within this discussion. In the rear of the lot, closest to Alexander's Keep, you would have double parking, 10 spots and then 10 spots, so an additional 20 spots. Then the back lot up to the dumpster enclosure would then be striped with, there is striping there already, but it would be striped more recently, up to date, with 11 spots, 15 spots on the far right side, and 27 spots just adjacent to the building. Councilman Ramirez, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. For the 10 on 10 stacked in the back, I am curious about the drive aisle to like access and exit those spaces, because I feel like that area is surrounded by grass.
So when we did our walkthrough today with the landlord, what we saw on site visually is that that area is currently parked with all trailers. And so what was explained to us is that you would have spaces that are marked and the trailers would remain in those spaces. And because they are so rarely moved, it would be okay with the landlord if they were double parked with 10 additional spaces in front of it, and that the landlord at their discretion would have the trailers moved. That was
So
what was
in-
discussed with us on site.
So then 20 spaces would not be open for use of this tenant and their attendants?
I would see it as 10 spaces would be available to use, those 10 that are closest to the building, and that the others would be, as of today, utilized by trailer parking. Otherwise, you would have cars that are double parked, and then in case of an emergency,
Right.
they would have to utilize the grass to leave.
And a second question, I know, and it's kind of tying into this, the 11 and 15 proposed parking spaces along the outside towards the residential and
Yes.
medical offices over there. There are trailers also parked through there, are there not? Or sheds or something, or?
No, so actually right now there are vehicles, there is some cleanup that would need to be done, and one of the dumpster units would need to be pushed back into the dumpster corral. I will say, when you do walk this space, there are very, very faint parking lines that were there in both of those sections. This would be a remarking of those spaces. When that's remarked, you will ultimately have a couple additional spaces. The landlord did let us know that they have not restriped the parking lot since they took it over in 2013. So
Very apparent.
there are some very faint lines out there. So it was a good visual for Thomas and I to do the exercise and walk through it with him and see it. We did have some points of measuring out where we were concerned about the fire access and the width of the aisleways. So we did talk to those points as well.
And I know that this is not necessarily in the purview of this, but I'm very curious if these aisles, drive aisles, meet the standard that we hold our other applicants to.
So what we will have to do is we'll have to take this updated an updated striping plan, which we fully expect to get by midweek.
Okay.
And we're hopeful that that's going to detail out what all the drive aisle widths are.
Mhm.
And then we would do the same thing that we're doing with our other applicants at this time and other future developers. We would reach out to the fire marshal's office and we would discuss with them the emergency apparatus, being able to navigate and have full fire access. So we do intend to go through that just based on the, I would say, simple knowledge that Thomas and I have of what we've recently learned, working very closely with Chief Smolsky. We did do that exercise at 3 different parts on this map. So when you first enter into the site and you're headed north and you get right there to that tight location of the curb that comes out some and you're now into that big parking lot here, we checked the radius, not the radius, we checked the width there. As you come around to Cookies and Cream and you're coming back on that curve on what would be your northwest portion of the curve,
Mhm.
we checked it there as well because originally there was a proposal of parallel parking along that curved line. And then as you're coming out to exit the building, there is parallel parking that perpendicular parking that currently exists where those offices sit. And we checked that distance there from where their loading zone is, if you're familiar with that in the back,
Mhm.
and then those perpendicular spaces against the building, and then over to the edge of where the new stripes of that parking would go.
Last question. Was there any discussion with the landlord as far as wayfinding signs, the one-way direction enforcement sort of piece?
So as we wrapped up our walk, one of the discussion points that I had with the landlord is, oftentimes the concerns we hear from people who visit the site or tenants is the wayfinding, the one-way entry, one-way exit, and that it is sometimes very confusing for people who have never been to the site. Once you've been there and you go often, you understand and you know it. He did state that they are fully proposing to add additional arrows in the striping plan and remark the ones that are there and try to improve what is existing for wayfinding. He, to my understanding, will be in attendance at the meeting Monday night on the 7th, and any additional questions or concerns he is happy to address. If we have some, we would like to go ahead and give him feedback so we can have a productive conversation. So if you have additional comments, please do share those with us so we can take them to him.
That's all I have for right now, but thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Larson?
I haven't seen an original site plan on this to identify the striping. Do we have an original site plan?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So
a
what
good
we
enough
have-
answer.
Let me tell you what we do have. I'm sorry. We have a site plan that was applied for, and there will be an existing conditions page in that. That will be your most dated existing conditions that's going to show, ideally, I need to look it up and pull it for you, but it should show how the property was pretty much purchased and what the striping would have looked like then if it's on there.
Mhm.
So I
'Cause-
can have that document pulled.
Because what I'm looking for is the approved parking spaces that they have. Right here, what I see is just a piecemeal, oh, I'll throw something there, I'll throw something there. I would prefer to see a updated site plan by them, showing where their improvements are, where the loading zone is active, where they're going to be blocking traffic from not parking for the loading zone. I would like an official site plan for this. Is that something we can request?
As part of your SUP.
I mean, that requires engineering fees. I mean, it is a load on the customer, but if we don't have an official site plan of this, how can we show improvements? how can we even approve improvements?
I understand.
Okay, I'm done.
Councilman Passano?
All right. Well, thank you, Ken, for that question, because that was something I was curious about. Can we talk about the storage of vehicles there just for a moment, though?
Yes.
Is that permitted under the zoning to store those trailers and all that other stuff that he's got there?
Let me follow up with you on that, and the exact types of vehicles that are currently stored there.
Yeah, I have to admit, I mean, they cleaned up the site quite a bit, but there's still a bunch of trailers and other things that are stored there, and I didn't know if that was permissible in that zoning area. So educate me, please. So we've got the proof of occupancy, which is what, 4950, I think you said?
I wouldn't call it a proof of occupancy. It was a conversation with the building official of how occupancy works and that you would have generally 49 based on what she saw as of today on that tenant layout design.
Okay, so 49. How does that match up with the projected number of users?
So how it was explained to us is that the tenant would have to go through applying to the building department with their tenant layout. So they would take in their plans and they would show what they have in existence, and what they would have to do is they'll analyze it based on the square footage, the number of exit points they have, and then the other requirements that are in the building code. They'll generate that occupancy load card. If the tenant would want for additional users to be in the space, they can have that conversation with the building official of what improvements they would need to do to the space to then allow for it. So some of the examples that we were given is they would need to possibly add an additional door that would go out to the exterior. That would be a fire exit door. If that's the case, then they could possibly get additional users in. If there's a certain threshold that they meet with the number of A3 assembly users in the building, then they would possibly have to look at fire area number 4, which is the fire area they're located in the building. All of those tenants, they might have to put in a sprinkler system or at least a fire alarm system. At the time, we didn't have enough information on the building itself to be able to determine that. That would have to be a further discussion with the building official. Typically, that happens after an application's made.
And whose responsibility would that be?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Whose responsibility would that be to speak with the building official?
So at this point, Thomas and myself reached out to them, but I would highly encourage that the landlord, property owner, and the applicant go down to the county and request a meeting, because they're going to have the exact details of the space. They're going to know if there's a fire alarm system already in place, sprinkler system. They're going to know exactly what users are in those different fire areas. So the entire building is broken up into different fire areas based on firewalls. And so they're going to have the most up-to-date information and get a more accurate answer.
So it sounds like there's a lot more homework to be done here. To me, anyway. Right? Maybe the 7th wouldn't make sense. Maybe there needs to be more homework being done to get better answers before we vote on this. Just throwing it out there. Want to ask about the parking again. So what would trigger, I mean, Ken made a really good point about the site plan, right? I mean, that's the critical aspect of this, and whether there may be one or not, I don't know. But so what on the environmental side, are they saying that they're going to park on grass, or are they going to prepare an area so that it's, a parking lot, so to speak? I'm not sure I'm following that discussion. to be
With what's
honest with you.
shown here, these updated numbers, is that? So when we walked the site being all of the paved area, what the landlord did is mark out and walk with us to show where these 190,
201.
Total of 201.
so the updated,
Right.
201, parking spaces exist. And so what they're proposing is utilizing the existing pavement that you see today and striping it for all of these
So
spaces.
they're not going to be parking on grass.
No, there would be no parking on grass.
Because then that would, depending on the square footage, that might trigger some environmental issues that they would have
Correct.
to, stormwater and what have you.
Mhm,
And that wouldn't be likely to happen.
right. And
But he
this,
could do that if he wanted to, but he would have to go through the process.
correct.
You were going to say something else?
I was just gonna add the site plan and reference, at least the updated one that we have from when they took ownership of the property.
Okay.
We did discuss that very briefly today, that it was submitted, it was worked through, it expired, it was not bonded. And so they would have to come back in and update that site plan.
Okay. So we've got occupancy, we got parking, wayfinding signage that was previously discussed, traffic control. What about traffic control? Anything new on that? Because I know at the last discussion, we were concerned about the entry and exit, egress and ingress being substandard. Is there any movement on that or any work to be done?
There's no movement on our end on that. That would come down to a discussion again with the landlord and a site plan and making improvements to the site.
Okay. All right, thank you,
Mhm.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yep, Councilman Finan.
So even at the end of the day, if they're able to have 201 striped parking spaces,
By keeping the six.
so is that,
I
I think
would,
last time you said,
I would say, after walking it today, I want to go back with the landlord and question 3 of the spaces that he's including. I thought we were in agreement that those 3 would not be included because it made a very narrow drive aisle between the 2 buildings that exist on site. And in that area specifically, I think we would want to make sure that there's good fire access because of the proximity to both sides of the building. So I would want to revisit the 201 number with him. I would feel more comfortable having that discussion and updating the number accordingly, and it would fall in the 190s.
198, 201, do you think based on the number of people that might be attending the prayers, including Friday and during Ramadan, do you think that's an adequate number of parking spaces for all tenants?
I think what council needs to take into consideration is the peak times. So the time of day in which the different users are going to be utilizing the space. And I don't want to say that to push off the question because that's not my goal. My goal would be we need to analyze if all of the users are going to have a peak at 5 p.m. 5 p.m. on a Friday, then we need to take that into consideration. If you have this commercial building with different uses, offices who are 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and they leave for the weekend, but the brewery has their peak hours from, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then you're not going to necessarily have as many conflicts. So I think we need to analyze it looking at this handout sheet of what users you have there and what type of business they're doing. And then you're going to be able to better answer your question. When you look at the religious assembly going into the rear of the structure, there's definitely with striping going to be more parking spaces available in the rear and the side being the east side between the residential on Gainesville side and us. You'll have more parking there that can help facilitate the users, but you need to again look back at the prayer schedule and see how did those times and the peak, the most number of people they have conflict with the other users in that area. The other users I'm seeing would be Jazzercise, a dance studio in that direct end of the building, a dance studio, Jazzercise, and then some of the offices that are on the back of the building closer up to Washington Street. So if a user doesn't park in the main parking and walk all the way around to the back of the building to enter into the Islamic Center, if they're mainly parking in the back and the east side, then it may not be as big of a conflict with the brewery or the restaurant users or Battlefield Jiu-Jitsu as it stands today.
And then going back to the number of parking spaces, and again, I don't think, we're not sure, right, whether or not they're gonna be able to stripe 198 or 201. This is just based on you. and
No,
Thomas
this
just
was,
walking.
I will say, when we walked it, they had already walked it and measured based
Okay.
on a parking spot standard. And they had put a striped dash line. So I would encourage you all, if you have a chance, hopefully the rain didn't wash it away. But if you could pop by in the next day or two, you can see that there are striped markings on the asphalt as it is. There's white dashes of everywhere that they're proposing to stripe these spots. And then you'll see numbers circled at the end of the line, much like you do on a site plan. So if you can, I would at least pop by so you can get the visual of what it looks like today.
What's your opinion about needing either Haymarket or Prince William County Police to direct traffic during certain prayer times or Ramadan? Do you think that's necessary?
I do. And
Okay.
I say that for the safety of our community and the safety of the users of this religious assembly. We certainly don't want anybody who's entering and exiting the site to be in danger, have safety, traffic conflicts coming in and out of the property. Much like our other religious assemblies in town who are on Washington Street, they do rely on police presence to safely get in and out of the parking lot in a timely manner. I do expect that for their busiest prayer time or for their most holy days where they have a larger turnout. I do. And I would also say that would be complimentary of what we also see with the preschool that's located on Washington Street at peak drop-off and pickup time. A lot of those parents are probably pretty thankful of the person who slows down and flashes their lights to let them turn in and out of the parking lot. And we see that at 8:30, 8:45, 9 a.m., that window, and then we see it again in the afternoon.
Okay, and do we know if this space is going to be used? I know the times and the number of people is based on mainly in relation to prayers. Do we know if this space is going to be used for events, to host events? Any events?
That
or-
would be a follow-up. Do you have the answer? Okay.
It would be a follow-up question with the applicant as well. I do want to highlight that after we had posted the agenda, there is an updated write-up submitted by the applicant that we can look through. Some of the questions that we brought, it talks about relationship to other tenants as well. On the third page of that updated submittal, you'll have more specific daily prayer schedule and updated prayer times based on the time of year. This is just a helpful point of reference for what we were just discussing as well. Now, as for additional uses, if it is not found in the overview, then we can follow up on that and provide that to you.
Real quick, while we're on this page, it was asked at the last meeting of the applicant what the latest start time would be of one of those prayers. So you'll see here on page 3 in the row that has June 2022 or June 22nd of 2025, you'll see the earliest start time would be 5 a.m. and the latest start time would be 10:14 p.m.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up. That was a question that was asked last time.
Good, Alex.
And the applicant is here if any of council wants to ask them
I
questions.
will,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if regarding the events, right? If you're going to host any events other than the prayers, that would be something that I would like to know.
Thank you for hearing me. Yes, to answer to that will be yes. There will be events, but it's not like recurring or and anything that keeps on happening. It's going to be some scheduled events at certain times. And I did mention that previously that we aim on doing those over the weekends when we have less traffic and people more available, probably best suited for youth who's not into the school life. So that's about that, but they are not as regular as scheduled that I could put on a frequent occurrence.
How many people do you expect to attend such events?
We do not expect a lot of people. When you ask, I think I'm speaking by experiences. When you ask your teenagers to come and talk about some of the faith-related things, not a lot show up. So I wouldn't count on a lot of them to be here. But having said that, if I'll give you some ballpark, I'll say 20, maybe 30. Yeah.
Councilman Baker,
Yes.
you have the floor.
I will make it short and sweet. Will we have that site plan by the time on Monday's meeting? Or will it be tight? Because that's a good,
The original or the submitted update site plan?
what Ken's talking about. Will that be? No? Okay.
So what I can supply you with is the old site plan that was applied for and it was approved, but they have not bonded it and they're not able to work towards construction on that without coming in and updating it. So
Okay.
I don't know if those are still the wishes of the landlord and property owner to facilitate that site plan. But I can give you it for reference and it'll show existing conditions in there.
Oh.
What I am hopeful we will have is the striping plan, which will be a more detailed image of what we passed out tonight showing the spaces.
Okay. And on that, only reason I ask, will that Washington, because you gave us a map, but will that Washington be kind of shown a little bit more for like the people coming out of Green Hill Crossing, like trying to make a left? Because I know, because living in Green Hill Crossing, sometimes trying to make a left or trying to get out of that parking lot or trying to make a left coming towards Town Hall, if we could put that for a reference, like expand the map a little bit out so it shows all of Washington Street. And then also, I was confused because parking on grass, but this weekend there was a car show and they had a bunch of cars parked on the grass there. So I can show you pictures because I took my son there. So when I hear there's no grass parking, so I don't know if that was Trouville or Ghosted Concept.
Councilmember Baker, this is the first I'm hearing of the car show event that occurred on the property.
But how are those even allowed to host them? It was like 50 cars, 60 cars there.
I can show you the event. We have a lovely event ordinance that I'm happy to share with you that we have yet to officially update. So I'll talk to you
Okay.
offline.
So confused on that. And then did they pick a location for the occupancy? Because I know last time they had 2 parcels to choose from. Is there?
We were still going off of the 2 being either or. when we
Okay.
had our discussion.
Okay. That was it.
Okay. A couple of quick questions. I'll give it to, again, this is a little bit of just, from my understanding of things. I appreciate you kind of giving us when the earliest and the latest times are for your prayer services. That's actually very helpful to me. My understanding of it, and I'm particularly talking about the Ramadan services. My understanding is, and you noted it here, is it goes back 10 days, roughly. Is it 10 days every year?
Yes.
Okay. So presumably that evening prayer is actually starting after is my assumption correct that evening prayer then is done right after sunset? Is that the appropriate?
In Ramadan.
Yes.
So that is yes. I think that's roughly a little after sunset. Yes.
So for the next few years, those prayer
will keep on going.
services are actually going to start a little bit earlier in theory.
In theory, and that is, I'll say, when I say little after sunset, that means I think about 60 minutes to,
Okay.
probably 60 to 70 minutes after sunset. So if they keep on going back, it's going to start somewhere around I think I provided this year's timings.
Yes.
So if I'll take a look at that and let you know. If it's 8:30, then it's going to start somewhere around 7:30 or 7.
Right.
Yep.
And then in December, it'll start going the other way again. into
Yes,
November.
that's
So
right.
In a
That's
few
right.
years.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
No,
that
you're right.
It really has to do with the setting and the rising of the sun, correct?
That is true. Whatever you're seeing in March is going to happen roughly after 35 years again. So every year is going to be 10 minutes back.
Okay. And I appreciate you also sharing the your projections based upon a 10% and a 12-year increase.
Yes.
That was something I know I specifically asked about. So I do appreciate. I'm just getting a look at this right now. I think, as far as the number of vehicles, and I guess with that in mind, right, if we're talking about with this increased growth that we're going to see then over the course of 5 years, you're looking at a whatever parking plan or site plan that can accommodate 5 years out, not just what it can accommodate today. Or, I want to just kind of point out and make sure that we're looking at that, not just, hey, we can get in, the 40 vehicles that they expect, for, the Friday, prayer service. But in 5 years, it's going to be 59 vehicles that we're accounting for those other 19 vehicles.
Yeah, little feedback on that. You're still limited by the space inside the building, right?
You are still
So-
limited, but I want to, you absolutely, I understand that too. I just wanted to make sure this is with the numbers we have on hand that we're tracking that.
Yeah, but I would like to think that if they get to the point where they're exceeding the available parking or the space inside, that potentially you're gonna move, right?
So
Yeah.
that's a very good
Or
point.
expand
That's
or
number
move.
one. Number
Yeah.
two is you see probably there will be more such facilities,
Yeah.
which will accommodate from here up till Nooksville. I see probably 10 to 12 different churches which are accommodating people who are living closer and then dispersing that. So I do expect that at some point there's a mosque being built in Knoxville on the other side that's going to be in place. So as the expected attendance is going to increase, the more such facilities will be created, and that's going to disperse load between these facilities. But you're right. If we run out of this, yes, we'll move out.
I have one more question for staff.
Sure. Councilman Passanello.
That's it. Okay. This is for staff. So I'm a little confused, Emily, relative to this site plan discussion. So they have an original site plan, but it's not bonded, which means they don't have a site plan.
So when I say original,
Okay,
so let me back up. Let me give a little history context for our newer members, if you don't mind, for a
Please.
second. So the property originally was split between the town of Haymarket and Prince William County jurisdiction.
Right.
It was annexed fully into the town of Haymarket. It was a public school that was built by Prince William County. And so they would have had an original site plan to build the structure and the additions and park it according to their standard. So when the new owner purchased it, they came in and applied for a site plan. And at that time, they wanted to expand the use of the building. They wanted to add additional stories onto the building. And so the parking would have been far more expansive as what you see today. So I can give you that site plan that they've applied for. They worked through the requirements of the planning commission. They have an approved site plan, but it was not bonded and has now expired. So if they want to act on any development, they cannot use that expired plan. They have to come in and update that plan or start fresh. Does that clarify?
that says a lot to me, because then I have to ask, well, how can you do an SUP without a site plan?
Good question.
So we have had SUPs on other properties that have other tenants. We have worked through this type of an exercise previously in other buildings that I'm sure will be brought up Monday night. And a lot of the times what we see on these other SUPs is you aren't working with a multi-tenant building of this capacity. So you don't have a list of, 8 to 12 other tenants in the space. It's usually a building with just 2 or 3. And typically those are daytime, Monday through Friday office use. And then the other religious assemblies that want to occupy the other portion of the building are typically a Sunday or Saturday use or evening hours on Monday through Friday. I'd also add that on one of the more recent SUPs that we did for religious assembly in the B1, the occupancy load card only ended up being 49.
I have it right here.
Thomas is going to pull it up. 42 occupants based on the use area and the tenant layout review that they worked with the county on. So kind of an apples to oranges in that regard because it different location, different traffic management plan, different parking setup. But I at least can speak to that's what that occupancy load was for a more recent SUP of a religious assembly.
I want to note as well, I received this today after inquiring with the building department. Otherwise, we would have included this in the agenda and informed all
Yeah.
parties.
But there was some type of legitimate site plan for these other,
For that one, no, there was
No?
not.
Okay.
There was not.
Councilwoman Ramirez.
Thank you. So the other religious assemblies that we've had in town, I feel like I've known of at least 2 SUPs that were religious assemblies that required an annual renewal for the use of their space. Is that common practice?
I believe at least one of the ones you're referencing was for an educational facility.
Mhm.
And so that one, while it was run by a religious assembly as the kind of parent organization or the landlord,
Mhm.
it was the educational facility that was getting the 1-year renewals.
Okay.
That I would have to do some more research on. It was done prior to my time here, but the way I understood it, it was in regards to traffic management and parking evaluations.
I think it
and
was
that-
also with like a trailer use
Yeah.
as well. Mhm.
And so the council wanted to have more eyes on it and do reviews, see how things were functioning over time
Mhm.
and reevaluate as necessary.
Okay. And so what I'm hearing is that it's not uncommon in an SUP to have eyes on it and to revisit it maybe after a year or so. I wonder if council would be amenable to that idea since we kind of have a little bit of unknown, at least in regards to traffic flow, and the situation with the parking. It feels like there's a lot of unknowns. We also have no formal site plan. I'm just curious if that is something that council would entertain in a discussion.
I don't know, if you don't have a site plan, I don't know what you can do other than
Well, they want to
start,
use,
start anew and develop a site plan finally for this building, for this property. I mean,
I don't know if we can demand a landlord provide a site plan just simply because a tenant is asking for a special use. Because the landlord's not asking for this, is he? I mean, the applicant here is asking for a religious assembly. I don't know how we can force someone to give us
The
a
only-
site plan.
The only
Is
thing I
that
think there are some modifications.
staff,
happening
is
now.
that a reasonable requirement? I wish the attorney was here. I don't know. That kind of feels like a force expenditure that it almost borderlines unethical, in my opinion.
what I would like to do is I would like to further research our ordinance requirements and come back to council with the exact, here's what you can condition or not, if it's a requirement to have a site plan. We've done it in the past where an SUP has been applied for and they're utilizing existing conditions. In this case, the existing conditions don't show a full marked
Yeah.
out 198 parking spaces. So we're now in this cycle of, at a minimum, they have to make improvements to the existing site in order to show that there's adequate parking.
And, sorry, and you feel like that triggers a requirement of a site plan then?
I didn't state one way or the other. I
Okay.
think it triggers.
Right, okay. I just feel like there's precedent of us not having site plans and the optics on it. We need to be very cautious as a council with the optics here. And I would love some clarification from staff and our attorneys as well.
So Emily, will you provide us, you'll provide us that information so that we can,
Not gonna be here.
Yes.
okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions on this before we? All right, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, move on to the next agenda items, see if we can get through them before, and we'll maybe take a quick recess before the budget conversation. Policies and procedures. Kim, you're gonna take us through this.
Okay, we're starting on packet page 63 with the, for this is your first draft of your policies and procedures. Some of the red line versions I got off of Town of Middleburg's adopted policies, and there's also some comments that came from Councilmember Baker and Councilmember Passanello. I don't know if you want to start in each section or if you want to concentrate on a section. I'm ready to discuss what
I think again, kind of, you know, some of the budget, I think, go through, give us the high level, and
Okay.
then maybe we can ask some specific questions from there.
Okay. Basically, section 1 was just a basic, what the purpose of the rules and rules of the procedures are. Section 2 is when and where we meet, continued meetings. On section 2-1.2, I added in your resolution that you adopted in 2023 regarding remote participation. That is your adopted resolution. So it is now part of the policy and procedures and states what constitutes a quorum, how a council member can participate remotely, and also if there is a declared state of emergency from the governor or from the mayor on how you would operate there. Section 2.2 I referred back to your policy and procedures a little bit on emergency meetings. So it's cross-referenced. Let's see, on packet page 68, I did redline abode and put residence. Then section 2.6, your organizational meeting, I changed that. Redlined in November because that's when you used to have your organizational meetings in July. So now I have it for January since your elections are in November. I've also added that during your organizational meetings, you all could, at each term that there's a new council on, that you would review the policies and procedures for any edits that you would need to make then.
Good.
Also, I spoke with a lot of clerks on code of ethics. And at their organizational meetings, they read when new council comes in and they are sworn in, they are read the code of ethics by the clerk. And that is when the current council that comes on acknowledges the code of ethics. They don't sign a code of ethics, but they all acknowledge that they have, that the code of ethics had been read to them and that they acknowledge that that is part of the policy. I added in section 3-3 from Middleburg on a that the mayor could entertain and answer questions of parliamentary law or procedures. So that's one of the rules of the mayor that was added in there that was not in before.
Mhm.
Section 4 and under the agendas, I changed the delivery of the agenda a little bit. That we would get that the staff would get the agenda out was 1 week prior to a work session and 5 days prior to a regular meeting. Sometimes that pushes us, especially if we have like a heavy agenda like we have tonight, to get it out 1 week ahead of time. So I changed that to 5 calendar days prior to the work session and no later than noon on Thursday prior to the regular meeting. Especially like tonight when you guys have given staff extra items to research or come back with. It takes us a few days to get everything put together and back into the regular agenda. Also, I added adding items to a special meeting or emergency meeting requires that all members of council must be present.
Where is that?
That was not in there. And that's something I believe by state code. And then I go section 5, the order of business. I added the order of business to the work session order of business, added closed session at 6 p.m. Because it was in the regular meeting. I redlined that and pulled it up to its 6 o'clock meeting. Went into the consent agenda. Typically, a consent agenda is, so when you all adopted this back in 2022, you had this added so that the meetings would move more quickly. And that the written department reports were in detail, that there was not a need to pull them, that they would be read and approved. So that's typically what a consent agenda is. Now we can discuss if we want to keep it as a consent agenda or if we want to go back to prior to 2022 where the department reports were in a line item. Minutes approval was a line item. Liaison reports was a line item. We've also been suggested that possibly having the council member Passanello, I believe, suggested that we pull and put department reports, particularly the town manager and the police chief report in the work session, so things could be discussed at a work session so that we could keep the consent agenda as is and pass it the next week at the regular meeting. And 5.3, citizen participation. I did add that. If a citizen is unable to attend, that was not in your policy at all. They were encouraged to email. Let's see, I'm sorry, 5-3, number 12 and 13. This was added from Middleburg. Like at a public hearing, discussion from, a discussion on council is they don't do until the public hearing is over. That's when they discuss. And then once the council has heard the presentation and the subject was previously denied, that the applicant would not allow to bring up the presentation again until 3 months after their first presentation. That was added by Middleburg's policy. And the rest is, I believe, everything that is still what really no, section 6-1 defines a quorum. And that's by state code and the town attorney. And that's packet page 82.
So Kim, can I ask you a question? Going back to citizens.
Well, let's get through it quickly and then we'll go to everybody. We'll get a chance to question it.
And that is, I believe that's all I have. Oh, I'm sorry.
Page
Page
89 is what we've contributed.
89, your finance,
Yeah, that's our
your liaisons
liaison.
reports. This is,
Liaison roles and
yep,
responsibilities.
packet page 89 is the liaisons, and each department, each liaison gave me, this is what they gave me on their responsibilities as a liaison. So I added all those.
I do see on
And the
page
last
95, yeah.
page 95, this was asked by the town manager, that all requests from the town council, either as a whole or individually, will go through the town manager. Meaning, I believe she was referring to task-related items, correct?
All right, let's, Councilman, you kind of jumped in before, said you had a question, so I'll.
Okay, back
Okay.
to citizen participation, I heard, right?
Start.
All right, go, page 75, citizens' comments via email.
Okay,
It looks like basically they need to provide a name. Otherwise, you're not going to read their comments during the
yes,
meetings, right?
yes, I need to put that in there.
So, but I would,
Yes,
you know,
name
personally,
it, right,
yes.
it's in there.
But personally, I would like to know whether or not that, you know, whoever's making a comment, whether or not they reside within the town or not, right? I would like to know whether or not they're a resident of the town.
Okay.
So I don't know what your thoughts are about requiring them to provide their address.
I mean, to speak at the podium, they're supposed to share their address. I think
Their
that's
name
a
and their
standard
address.
Yes.
expectation.
Yes,
I don't disagree with that.
I would have no objection to that at
To
all.
add name and address?
Address,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
yes.
Just to ensure
Okay.
continuity.
All right,
Was that all that you had?
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Kim, on the same section, I see that you noted you want, you're requesting that all correspondence be sent to you by 3 PM on the day of the meeting. And then hopping over to page 77, 13E, you mentioned, having copies sent to you or, any person who desires to submit written statements for forwarding to council prior to a council meeting must submit a copy to the clerk of council by 12 noon. Would you like to maintain the same time for those
sure,
two things?
sure.
Would you like to have 3 PM or noon?
3,
Okay. I'm okay with that change if council is as well.
No, I'm okay with that, yeah.
That's all I had. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
I had a couple things, but you want? I'll go. Yeah, I'll jump in here. All right, a few things I had. Let me just go back. First of all, let me be the, little bit of the word nerd on this a little bit. In section 2.6 for the organizational meeting, under D, the wording that was added, it says the rules and procedures such as spending policy and check signing policy should be reviewed and edited. I would propose that we change that to shall be.
Okay,
I tend to not like ambiguous language.
okay.
That would just be one recommendation unless anybody has any objection to that.
No.
I'm gonna come back to that one. There were a couple other things I had. There was, one of the things that was mentioned was, let me find it here. On page 77, one of the words that you added was, under 12, was council members shall not discuss issues raised by the public except by consent of the presiding officer at the conclusion of the public comment section. One of my concerns there is, if the appropriateness of if an issue is raised from the podium and we want to comment on it individually as part of our council members' time, the appropriateness of that. So I wanted to discuss that amongst the council here as to, I personally feel that this is limiting a little bit to say we can't make comment to the public on maybe what, even if it's our personal beliefs or personal opinions. So I wanted to get thoughts on that and how to address that from everybody.
Well, is that the intent?
Yeah, I think this is just interaction, right?
Right, interaction.
It's just interaction.
Just interaction.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm good. If it's just with interaction, then I'm good with it.
Well, that
Do you
should be,
feel we should get clarification
Clear
on
that,
this sentence then?
I would like to get some clarification on that if we can, make that a little more explicit and clear. The only other two comments I had, which are general in nature, I guess, is number one, with regards to the consent agenda. I would be in favor of, I know there was an email circulated on this. I agree that I think it would be good if we did have the town manager's report as well as the chief of police report, since those seem to be the ones that are pulled the most for discussion. Perhaps if they were taken out of the consent agenda and put in just part of the regular agenda. The rest, I think I'm good with having part of the consent and being able to pull out. That's my personal thoughts on that. The other thing I think we just need to discuss is at the organizational meeting, because I think we had a little bit of a back and forth on this as to what the right procedure is as far as the seating on the dais. Yeah, as far as, because it says in here that it's seniority, and I know that we didn't do that this time. So I just wanted to kind of make sure we look at what we just did versus what's in our current policy. I want to make sure that we're consistent.
what number was that?
Well, now I got to look.
Um,
It's on page 70, 2-8.
Yeah.
Yep.
Unless determined otherwise.
It says the mayor shall occupy the center seat on the dais. Members of the council shall select among seats according to seniority unless determined otherwise by council. Do we want to amend that language to be consistent with what do we want to make that at the mayor's discretion? Do we want to make that at the continue by seniority?
Personally, I would like to keep it the way it is, even though I'm okay with the.
Hey, I don't want to
Right.
keep it you would say just like keep it the way it is.
Based on seniority, I think it should be based on seniority, not based on what the mayor wants to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I concur with that.
makes sense. What do you guys think, Mayor?
What do I have to say about
No.
it?
Mayor's prerogative.
I'll go on record. I think it's absolutely acceptable for a mayor to decide where people sit when they're running the meeting. If there's a conflict or something that they perceive, then they're the leader. We're the group, but she's our leader. If she chooses us to sit in a certain spot, that's absolutely fine. I think where we're seated right now is fine. I would have been fine sitting in this chair right here too. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm comfortable letting the mayor decide.
I tend to think it could go, you know, either way. I know, unfortunately, the mayor's not here to, you know, kind of talk, you know, about it. I know her, she wanted the vice mayor to her side. Yes, I think that's kind of been the standard. I think she then kind of looked at it more from a, you know, it was almost a business liaison, community liaison, you know, commissions, financial, you know, and I know that that's kind of how she had kind of thought about it. So that was a kind of just said as an opposing, but that's why I was saying I can see that going both ways. I don't have any heartache either way. I tend to agree with the seniority aspect of things. I think probably lean a little bit harder, but I just wanted to put it out there for discussion. I don't want to shy away from it because I know it was something that was talked about a little bit.
I'm fine with how it is now, but if the mayor, I don't know if we need to have the mayor here to
Let's hear from our ex-mayor.
discuss it. You know, I don't know how that works, but
You're going
I'm
to think of
flexible
this as a
with,
future, not particularly the current.
It's not the
mayor
current.
Sitting
Yeah,
at
it's
the
not the current.
dais. So you're looking at the mayor as a general role, not as a particular. person.
Correct.
And
You are.
I can add to that, as could Kim. In practice, what's been done the last 8 years amongst the two different councils is it was decided by the mayor.
And
And
in
then
my
you have a
opinion,
former mayor to
I'm
speak
okay
to
with
it.
that. Then if the mayor chooses,
if I
Yeah,
recognize-
please.
I'll put that on the
Okay.
record.
Yeah, in my opinion, you know, the mayor has such little power that I feel they should have the right, since they're responsible for the organization chart. I feel that seating arrangements should be their responsibility too, in the sense of, you know, maybe behind the scenes, there's a cooperation that goes on between the council and the mayor, but the mayor's got the last decision.
Oh, we're changing now.
I also want to say posing it in a seniority view kind of puts us on a totem pole, and we are all colleagues and we all have the same say. And I don't want someone up here to think that they have more of an influence than the other. So allowing the mayor to have that role and responsibility, I think it's important and doesn't divide us in any way that's unnecessary.
I could go either way with this. I don't have a whole lot. I raised the issue because I knew there was a discussion on it. So, but I would say that it sounds to me, actually, it sounded to me like we had, you know, admittedly on the fence, I could go either way. We had a couple council members who were for it, a couple that were against changing it. So I don't want to
I mean,
say that we don't want to give a direction.
Let me be frank, right? When I was assigned to the seat, I'm like, why? Why did she choose the seat for me, right? Not saying that it's based on some whatever ill intent, whatever. I'm fine where I am, right? But if we keep it the way it is, in the future, people like me and others will not have that kind of, you know, thinking. It's based on seniority, it's not based on what the mayor wants or doesn't want. Does that make sense?
It does. It
Yeah.
does to me. Yes.
Yeah, it does. You know,
It's clarity in language.
Yeah.
Clarity in language, regardless of what the intent is.
So do we have to vote on this, or do we have to?
I don't think we vote tonight.
I don't think we
Or-
vote. We don't have to vote. I think, but I would
Give
probably.
direction.
Yeah.
I think I would agree with you that I think it's having it very, like, you know, to me, when I do read this, I think about, you know, thou shalt select among the seats according to seniority. You know, that to me sounds like you're, you know, like we all stand over across the way and, you know, okay, you know, Joe, you're up, go grab your seat, you know? You know, and I don't know that that's the way either. I think I would lean towards being very explicit to say the most senior member sits in this spot, the vice mayor sits in this spot, or go with its mayor selection, you know, and explicitly say it's the mayor selection. I would just, that's my opinion. Yes.
I don't want to add more detail to the fire, but how do you determine seniority? Is it continuous consecutive years served? If you have a break in service, do your years of service add up? Do your years of service on planning commission and ARB count towards your total seniority? So,
Age.
yes, you're right. The youngest gets to pick their seat first.
There it is.
Ageism at its finest. Love that.
I think on that point, actually, that's an excellent point. I think that I would lean a lot more towards this should be based upon, mayor's selection with. For record.
We can draft the language.
Let's draft language and then go from there.
Hey, Joe, I beat you out. I got seniority
That-
because of ARB.
That was all of my comments on that. So
Okay.
Councilman Larson, I'll go to you on your comments.
Like I said, my comment is, just give it a mayor prerogative.
Make it lottery based, how about that?
So if you win the lottery, you get to sit in the middle.
Secret Santa, I can take your seat and you can have my seat and we can pass it around.
Any other comments, Councilman?
White elephant, whatever you want to call it, right? That's it.
That's all you have?
Mayor's prerogative.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilman Passanel,
All
what do
right.
you?
So these are essentially our bylaws, right? Really,
Essentially.
when you think about it. I want to thank you, Kim, for putting in the policy on participation electronically. I think that'll help future members understand what their requirements are that you follow. Of course, it's going to require additional cross-referencing with updates in Richmond, but okay. Let's see, what do we have? So I'm curious about this code of ethics thing. Acknowledging it, but not required to sign. All right, I guess that's what Middleburg does.
Middleburg, Herndon, Vienna,
Okay,
Warrenton.
Is it a note?
I'm sorry.
Is it an oath, point of information? Is that what it pretty much is an oath?
Yeah.
I will
pretty much.
abide by the code of ethics.
Yeah.
So
So
I would need to see what that looks like to agree to that. And what are you saying exactly?
Okay.
So I think that would be helpful, because if it were the code of ethics that we adopted about,
Loyalty.
yeah, exactly.
Six,
I don't-
7
I don't
years
think I
ago?
would get anywhere near touching that.
Yeah.
And by the way, just so you know, I mean, I guess we could go through item by item and whether we agree or disagree, but essentially we'll end up voting on adopting this whole package. So just a point of information. All right, mayor's discretion, I'm going to bypass that one. All right, delivery of agenda,
What page? are we
page 72, 4.2.
on?
I think it would be very helpful to put in there that consistent with the code of Virginia 2.2 3707. Take a look at that. Specifically G, subsection G, that when members of a public body shall be made available, shall be given an agenda, it should also be made available to the public
Right.
for inspection, right? And how do we do that? I mean, I guess we do that by uploading it on our website.
Right.
So we have to be sure that that's done concurrently. That's page 72. Somewhere in here, do we want to mention the requirements for COIA and FOIA training? Because we have to do that again this summer, right? I think.
Want that in your organizational?
Um,
Since it's every 2 years?
I mean, I think we're required to do it as a new council. So yeah, if you can figure out where that goes, I think it
Okay.
would be important
All
to
right.
include that. Which reminds me, we have to do that soon.
Well, funny thing is, you all had FOIA training a year ago, February. FOIA officer came here,
Yeah, that's right.
so you're good for another year.
Okay, so All right, I like, so the department reports I'll be contrarian on that. And frankly, I think if we had the department reports as part of the work session, we could make the regular meeting be more seamless, I think. And that gives everybody a chance to ask all the questions that they have and to vet everything. I mean, after all, that's what a work session's for, right? To prepare for the regular meeting. So that was my only comment for suggesting that that be part of the work session agenda rather than elsewhere being brought out, and be part of the consent agenda. That doesn't preclude anybody from pulling one of the reports if there's still an open item that they haven't been satisfied with. I mean,
Yeah, I wouldn't object to that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I wouldn't object.
so that was my recommendation or comment for that. Let me see. You got the address, so thank you for that. And you did that. Let me see if there was something else here. Forms in there. Well, I don't know if we want to talk about the liaisons, but I guess we can all review that. And if there's any questions, we can ask them of each other. So what is everybody's thoughts about including the policy for the contacting the town attorney? Because we do have a policy, correct, Emily, that we drafted?
Is it the one you guys drafted 4 years ago with the?
Who to contact, how to contact, all of that stuff. Maybe we can get a copy of
I
that.
think we can revisit it. Is it still council's desire that only the town manager and the mayor have direct contact? We had done that in an effort to be fiscally
Cost effective.
responsible.
Right.
So if you, a council member, have an issue you would like to discuss with the attorney, you have to clear it through the mayor prior to being able to directly contact the town attorneys.
Something to think about. And that's it for now. That's all I have.
Anything else from anybody else?
Just to piggyback on that, maybe just a reference to that policy,
You could do that, incorporate by reference.
say that we will follow that policy. That means that would be an external upgrade whenever we feel we need to address it.
Or maybe we put it in our binders.
Councilwoman Ramirez, comment.
Thank you. I know when we spoke about the policies and procedures prior, we had gone at great lengths to discuss the finance liaison position, and, you know, documenting all of those things. And there was talk about whether we needed both liaison positions or not. What was staff's position in regards to the two liaison positions? Because as it's drafted right now, it says finance liaisons. So I'm just curious. What is staff's recommendation?
I think that's putting staff on the spot. I think
They
this is a
spoke to
policy
on record
decision,
about it previously.
and they
No,
execute the policies.
I don't think there's a recommendation we're giving, but if you ask the question, discretion was brought up, so I went back to the policy that we all reviewed and signed off on. There's a few items there that could probably be addressed. You know, the intent of the finance liaisons at the beginning was to know what they didn't know, taking over a prior administration that was not as transparent on some of the items. I think in the past 3-4 years, we have achieved that. That's something that you guys should definitely take approval on that. I think now though, with the auditors in conversation, we have a lot of check and balances, probably a little bit over. You know, the whole purpose of the liaisons is to make sure everything's on par. If any major discussions need to be hashed out, kind of get the opinion on the of the finance liaisons, which in turn should be everyone on the board's opinion or thoughts or concerns. All the major decisions are being done here and during council times and work sessions. it's just, yeah. Two of the main things I did notice though, again, going to policies, one is that, the need, in fact, the mandatory signature needed on the check signing is of the town manager. That is something we should probably get back on track if we're going to go by the policy. The only time the liaisons are to sign is actually when it's over the, I think it's $3,000 limit, 3,000 over 3,000 or 1,000. 1,500. Aside from that, though, the liaison's job is obviously to review it, but obviously, with per the auditors, they like the process of mainly keeping the treasurer away from having all hands on everything.
Right.
We've maintained that by having that level of check and balances, as well as having the liaison or liaisons review the invoices, sign off on them that they have seen it, they approve it. If there's questions or concerns have been addressed. That is it on that part. As far as having two liaisons, I think it could go either way. Honestly, I feel like the four liaisons we've had there have been great. I think it's been a great tool for to get some knowledge behind the budget. I'm actually thoroughly enjoying, having Councilman Bayena there to be able to have more conversations. I think Tracy Lynn had prepared her a lot better for it. Obviously, Joe is always a great wealth of knowledge as well. And our past county friend too was great. I think that position, though, to be honest with you, it should be reviewed as probably also having someone. If you have two, it should probably be kind of the scenario now where it's one that's been there doing it for a while and kind of helping pass the knowledge over to the newer person. Just to kind of help assess, once you learn the budget, I think it's a lot easier to understand the overall
Right.
dynamics of the town.
So I was wondering, council, do we feel like we need to still, now that we've gotten over that hump of the previous administration mess and all of that? Like, do you feel like one liaison can handle that role of that and bring any concerns to us? Or do you feel like two people need to have that?
Can I follow up with the question?
Sure.
It sounds like, and again, I'm being direct here.
Yeah.
You have concerns with having two finance liaisons. Do you have a concern?
It's not that I have a concern. It's that if another council member wants to join a finance meeting, we can't. We've been excluded.
I see.
So I want everyone to have access and it not feel almost like exclusive. Does that make sense? I think that's why we got rid of the police liaison position. It felt very exclusive. They were the one talking to the chief. They were the one sharing chief information with us, and it was very exclusive in that right. And I think we felt like we would all rather be able to contact the chief, and we felt like the chief was responsible and trustworthy enough to share anything that we need to hear with all of us. And so we stepped away from that position. Again, that's in an effort for transparency. So I think bringing it down to one position isn't so much as like something that I'm personally invested in, but just allows us the ability to join in when and if we feel we need to. There's no limitation there. And it's more transparent in that sense where it's more accessible.
At the end of the day, it's our policy. It's not theirs.
Mhm.
It's our bylaws, not theirs. So we can do whatever we want. With respect to joining in, you can join in anytime you want, as far as I'm concerned. And you can meet with staff anytime you want. Any one of us can sit down and go through stuff. So I don't see that as an argument that holds water, to be honest with you. But if Alexander would like to continue, I'd be more than more than happy to pass the baton. I mean, because essentially that's what I'm doing. I'm doing the transition right now. That's what I've been working on. But frankly, I don't see any need to reduce it at this time because you can always sit down with the staff and other members. I mean, we sit here and we have discussions at every meeting. We get a report. I'm not hearing a lot of questions. from anybody, really, about the finance report. Not a lot of questions. This is the place to have that conversation. So that's my thought on the matter.
Could we, just playing devil's advocate, it's hard. Just to make everybody happy, is there a way that you could put something in there to make it, like, if someone wanted to visit with financial, to like have a written notice that they were gonna go attend that financial meeting? Because I know of quorums, and I don't know if that would be possible, but yeah, so
The meeting is posted.
I want to change,
the-
it's hard.
Well,
I want to change.
if I may, the meeting is posted publicly. We've had complaints at citizens' time that, 2:00, people can't make it. Well, I mean, I'll leave that to staff because we did talk about that. And it's very difficult for staff also with their time management. So that's why we kept it at 2:00 on Wednesday. I don't think there's a need for that, to be honest with you, because anybody can come to the meeting. It's publicly posted.
Yeah, the only thing, possible solution is if you, Mary, want to attend one of the meetings, I can,
I'm okay.
I don't have to attend, right? You can have my seat, and if you want to have visibility into what's discussed or what's reviewed, then I'm more than happy to, I think Joe, I think the most important person to currently that needs to be in attendance is you, because you are the check signer, right?
Right.
But that's a possible solution.
Well,
But again,
that's an easy fix, though.
yeah, if the majority of the council wants to bring it down to one, I'm fine with that, right? I'm just trying to understand what, the way I see it, the more the merrier, right?
Well,
You know.
unfortunately, not
Yes.
more than two of us can
Yes,
be
I understand.
at the same place. So what I'm saying is that there have genuinely been intentions of wanting to join the finance liaison meetings, whether it's to become more educated on what processes there are, what policies they follow, had any specific questions regarding what the finance liaisons were tasked with following through with staff on, rather than having to find a separate time to come in and sit down with just staff, or find time to grab coffee and get just the rundown, but actually want to participate and listen to the full conversation, you were excluded. If you were on council, you were excluded from that. So it's not open to anybody. It's not accessible to everybody. Your agendas are not posted prior to. This is not something that's just, it's not a problem. It's been a problem. And to negate that and dismiss that is kind of disrespectful to the people who've been excluded.
Okay, now we're getting down to the matter.
How often do you want to attend these meetings?
At the end of the day, I should be able to attend whenever I want.
So then that goes
So,
for
and
every-
I should
that
not have
goes
to
for
sit here and be
everybody
like,
else.
oh, Alexander, this is your job. But you need to sit out because I want to turn. What I'm saying is if we have one liaison, it doesn't matter. We can each come in and sit through what we want to sit through. Yes, not all 5 of us can come in, or 7 of us can all sit together. But if at the end of the day, we're like, hey, can I come sit through this with you guys? I'm not going to be texted, oh, sorry, you can't.
Can I ask for a point of clarification on this, point of
Very
order?
good.
I've heard a couple of things, and I'm gonna say I'm a little confused myself on this. I've heard that we can't attend, or that, we're, because there's 2 liaisons and we would be unable to be there and that we're excluded. But my understanding also is that these meetings are, and I see them, they are posted. They are scheduled,
There's no agenda to them.
but there's no agenda to them.
There's no information
But there is a
posted, there's no packet.
there is a standing agenda, as I understand it,
Pro forma.
okay?
So saying that I can talk about these things is very different than saying this is what we will be talking about.
Fair. I guess I'm asking for the point of clarification from you, Kim, is, because I also view it as, at the end of the day, even in my role as vice mayor, I'm still also a resident of this town. And if it's open to all residents, are we really excluded or not? What's the ruling on that?
I want to go
And if,
I want to go back to when Councilmember Lurson was a mayor and he did his walk with the mayor,
okay,
for an example. And he invited anybody to join him. His very first walk with the mayor had 3 council members. It then became a public meeting. Not that it has to be recorded, it just notes have to be taken.
Okay.
That's the only, so if you have 2 council members that are doing the liaison and a 3rd council member wants to join in, they can join in. It just now becomes a public meeting where notes are taken. Again, does not have to be recorded. I
Okay.
think the council member versus residents, as long as you would still, your council member card still trumps
So
the
Trump,
resident's
I
card.
got it. I understood. That's
Okay.
what I kind of assumed.
So,
I'm trying to put it,
but it doesn't exclude any council member for not attending if they want to attend.
What-
It just brings myself in or Emily in to take notes during that during that finance liaison meeting to say, this is what was discussed. As far as an agenda, there may not, it's just like any other liaison. An agenda does not have to be posted unless it's a public meeting.
but I was gonna say, I mean, if like,
But if I want to join, it would be a public meeting, so in the best interest of the conversation. The
And there
agenda
is
would be a requirement.
there is an agenda that comes out. Roberta does an agenda, I believe. We just don't post it.
I guess the answer, I think about the business roundtable, the last one, I was there as the business liaison. I know that the mayor intends to come as well. But I also know at the last one that Councilman Passanello was there, right? And if we had 3 of us in that, would those same rules apply there?
No,
Because we can sit far apart from each other.
because you're not discussing business.
You're not discussing business
that's
together.
hard.
Even though if 2 or more, if you have more than 2 people standing there talking about, it's like when you guys are talking here sometimes after your meeting, if they say, oh, somebody's got to leave,
Right.
same
Or like
thing.
when we were at the
But-
conference, it wasn't considered a meeting.
Right.
Okay.
But if you're talking to a business owner and the other 2 join in, then yes, now it becomes a public meeting.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So,
Not necessarily discuss it, but they're there in the conversation. So now it's a public meeting.
So Matt brought up a good point, because I want to go to the next business roundtable. Do I have to, in advance, let someone know that I'm going, so there's not?
We post those and we put it out that more than 2 council members may be present at
Right.
this event. And we
Right.
hold it as a business roundtable event. Staff does a majority of the speaking, and rarely are more than 2 of you together talking, like Kim just gave me an example. You're usually a passive audience member, you're listening, and if anything, I just point you out and say, oh, and this individual's here. At the last one, Vice Mayor spoke because he is our business liaison, and I invited him up to greet and meet everybody and introduce himself.
But so vice mayor's there, mayor goes, I go. There's no,
Still okay, as long as you're not talking to one another and discussing business.
I don't see how that's, I don't know.
Discussing business.
It's a
Discussing-
discussing, it's a discussing business.
But in
meeting,
finance
just
liaison
discuss
meeting, you're
business.
discussing
That's why it's
business.
different.
Right, that's the reason.
Okay, so what's okay, let's assume that someone wants to change this policy regarding the number of finance liaisons. What's the process for changing it? Is it just a matter of agreement?
You
Is it
guys change it.
through a vote, or what is
You
it?
remove the liaisons
We changed
changed it to
we changed our
liaison.
policy to one.
Policy.
We decide
This
amongst
is, yeah,
amongst
you've
us.
seen-
So then what happens to Alexander now, though?
Well, I
Oh,
guess
he
they could
stays.
be with,
He
they
stays.
be discussed between them.
It's okay.
Alexander
Okay,
stays
Jeff.
and I can travel more, so it's not a problem. But, you know, at the end of the day, the more than two people, as long as you post the meeting, two people can participate, but the other people have to be silent. Otherwise, then you have to take minutes. They can't participate in the discussion. Okay?
So would you want
So-
to come to a meeting and not be able to ask questions of staff or of your colleagues?
Well, I'll
And
tell
if
you
this
what,
comes a meeting, then you just take notes. You can ask questions.
yeah, you take notes. Somebody's gonna have to do it.
Right. If you come in and you want to be part of the meeting, then they would pull me in to take notes like minutes.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me. I really don't care. Anybody can come to the meeting. We're gonna have our discussion.
All right, so that's the solution. If you plan on attending, or any of you,
Knock
and
yourself out.
you like to interact, or
But if you
then
interact,
Kim,
then you gotta take minutes.
yeah, Kim,
Right.
or.
So
someone
then we'd
else
have to
take-
pull Kim from whatever she's doing to sit in.
Emily, you had a comment, or Roberto, you had a comment?
Roberta wanted to share.
Share voice.
So the purpose of the finance liaison in these meetings are truly, and it's even in the policy, is really to review payables, payments, day-to-day stuff that affects it. All the major big decisions are made at the council level. And in fact, the work session, the purpose of the work session is to discuss finances or any of the administration reports. So I just want to make sure it's on the record that no decisions are being made at the finance liaison level. It's more of the routinely payables that we need to pay. There have been times when we haven't had a meeting. There was no need to have a meeting. There's times where I wasn't available and town manager could take over the meeting, but there was just no need for it. So we did not have the meeting. So I hope that kind of clears that, but essentially as well too, Councilman Pasanal is right. I mean, I've sat here a couple of times. As much as I don't like to, sometimes I get grilled, but that's the whole purpose of the work session, to answer any questions and all questions to you guys as a council and the mayor. And again, too, I have to also say my doors are always open. I've actually had a couple visits from a few of you guys. I'll make the time. My door's always been open to not just you, but also residents. Always made it very clear. So, yeah, that's all I want to say about that.
Point of information, are the memo notes that go to the meetings, the town meetings, is that considered an official record of minutes discussed during the meeting, the financial liaison report?
It's part of the agenda packet.
It's all public information.
So that can be considered your FOIA record for that meeting. Is that correct?
Yep.
So anybody can attend, is what that's saying.
So I think we have to recognize that the appointments are made during the organizational meeting so that council members will be kept abreast of what's happening. Now, if that's not happening to some people's expectations, well, we can always examine that and see what we can do to improve on that. But that's the intent for the report. At the end of the day, and I've said this many times, we're here to represent the council, at least the finance liaisons, as far as I know. As far as I understand it, you're representing us on the planning commission. You're representing us on the ARB. You're representing us with the businesses in town. You're representing us with the customers, so to speak, our residents and others in town. And we let you do that by appointing you to that position because we have faith that you can do the job properly. So doesn't matter what position. If you're not happy with that, then we could discuss possibly making some changes. But what I'm hearing now is there's ample opportunity to get involved.
So let me clarify. I have tried to get involved and I was turned away. That is why this conversation is happening. So that's not putting it on anybody up here. I'm just saying that is what happened. And this is me trying to prevent that from happening in the future for anybody, not just myself. So me proposing one liaison is a very safeguard way to ensure that any of us can attend when we please. That's all, without this pulling Kim or Emily in and it turning into a meeting and having these notes and all these expectations that I would have of a meeting. Example, an agenda ahead of time so I can come into that meeting prepared. And it would no longer be me coming in to learn the process of what a finance liaison does. It would no longer be me being abreast of the information as it's happening in a discussion right then and there, me participating, which is what I wanted to do. So this is me from my experience saying, oh, how can I make this not happen again? That is why I'm proposing a singular finance liaison, which is why I asked staff, would we be able to follow those policies that we put in place after the previous administration with just one? And in our previous conversations, it was stated that we could go down to one, which is why I asked for a staff recommendation. It is of the belief that we can operate with just one finance liaison. This is not a personal attack. This is me saying, hey, this stopped me from participating. I don't want that to happen in the future. This isn't against anybody. So this is what I'm bringing to the table.
This is the first I've heard that you've been denied.
That is not true. I've stated it previously.
You have.
Yes.
Okay.
What do we need to do to ensure first and foremost that nobody is denied access? Is that a directive to staff to say, don't deny us access? Is that what's the?
I wouldn't even put it on staff.
I mean, if we're
According
denying,
to FOIA, we can't talk business more than two of us. So that's why that was said. It wasn't, I don't know if there's a policy that could prevent that. I don't want to put that on staff.
I don't know directly the time that you're referencing, so I apologize for not knowing that reference. I do know that when previous council member Schneider wanted to join us, we would make Kim and I spoke, and he had mentioned he was going to try to make several of the meetings. We made sure that we were ready, had he shown up, that we were going to have Kim attend and take minutes of it, and we were going to document it just as we normally would of any meeting of more than 3 members. We post the meetings so that the public knows that we might have more than 2 council members present. And so we were prepared on the staff level to take those minutes as required.
So are you saying that the policy needs to be in here that we allow staff a certain amount of time to know that we're planning to attend?
Generally speaking, we're very flexible.
Right.
If you guys come in at lunch and say, hey, I'm going to come back at 2:00 and I want to attend, we make it work. Roberto and I always sit in the meetings. And so if it's a difference of I take minutes or if Kim's here and she's able to join, that's fine. If this is the occasion and not the norm, then that's easy. We're flexible. If the desire is for it to be the norm where you have 3 or plus members joining and we need minutes, then yeah, I'll work with Kim and we'll make sure that we have the clerk or deputy clerk sitting in there, and that's just part of the job. So this is the council's discussion of what your policy and procedure is.
So let me ask a clarification question. We have an agenda, or we have a posting for the finance liaisons. We have postings for the ARB. We have postings for PC and Business Roundtable.
it is posted, yes.
That is posted. And what about
Community
relations?
I don't have standing meetings with anybody.
You don't have any standing meetings?
No.
Okay. But you do meet with people. So what if we wanted to participate in the meeting? How would we know?
I put them in my liaison report. I put
Do
in,
that in advance.
yes, anything that I have planned enough in advance, I put that there. If you would like me to send an email letting you know of upcoming meetings, I'm happy to do that.
Well,
but
if
I
you
have
put it
not
in your
previously.
report, then
Mhm.
that would be fine to know what was upcoming. So if somebody
Yes.
wanted to
Anything that's
participate,
currently scheduled is posted in there.
okay, that works. So
Okay, so I'm trying to summarize this. Um,
it's not that difficult.
It sounds to me like, well, I think what we need to do is, I mean, what I heard from staff just now is that you guys, if a third member wanted to attend and they gave you just a little bit of warning that you have the flexibility, will you then let us know if that becomes an issue and we need to say, hey, we're having more show up? Would you then come back to us and say we might need to just change some of our standard policy on this? Would that be fair to say, let's kind of keep it as is, but let's not restrict anybody? I think anytime anybody's restricted, I think that is a problem. So I think if we could do that and then assess over the next, couple of months, maybe.
Okay, back on.
All right, let's come out of recess. Our next item on the agenda is the draft communication plan. I guess I will lead that conversation real fast. Look, the current draft is in everybody's packet. What I will we've talked about this a little bit. I appreciate all of the input that I got from everybody on council, from the mayor. Recently had a good opportunity to sit with the town manager and our events coordinator, events manager. We had a very good discussion on a number of things, and they provided a lot of detail and information towards this plan as well. So at this point in time, I really I'm open to, I can go through it if you want, but I'll summarize it in whenever I think of communications. It's really the who, what, why, when, and then how. It's not so much a concentration on what the specific content was going to be, but just more of the avenues that we're going to use. So, and what type of content, et cetera. So I'll take questions and comments, and happy to address them as we go on, or work with staff to get this to a place where we can finalize it. So I'll
Did you
open.
want to start? You look like
Sure
you had
would.
notes.
Councilman Passanello.
Thank you very
Why did
much.
Joe always start?
Because I have. a
Someone
lot to
else have
say.
the mic.
He gets eager. He gets in there.
Well, I want to make sure I make my points because I won't be here, I don't think, Monday. So thank you very much for this, because this is something we've been talking about for a real long time. And finally have some meat on the bones. So this is great. If I could go through just a few things.
Sure, please
And-
do it.
So I noticed there was some discussion in here about FOIA, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe that's my own note. But when we talk about content management practices, are we also talking about record retention, page 99, executive summary? Page 99.
The executive summary.
Is
we're
it
talking about.
Last paragraph, first line. Because I think of it also in the FOIA aspect of record retention that's required by code. But is that what you mean when you say content management practice?
Yeah, I do kind of mean that. Yes, I mean that it means good note taking. It means being able to have FOIA, and there is a FOIA a section towards the back of this as well under legal and ethical
That's what I
considerations.
thought. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. And
Content management also means to be reusability. Reusability of different content. Historical reference of content that could be repurposed later. That's also what I'm referencing.
okay, got it. All right. Should we mention the SBP in here in this executive summary or no?
I thought you did.
Well,
Right.
later on he does, but I'm talking in the executive summary.
It does, in the sense that we highlight the 4 bullet points that are from the strategic plan. I don't specifically call that out, you're right, but it is, talk about generally that it supports the town's strategic goals.
Okay, no problem. Page 100. So we've had this ongoing discussion about the population of this town and what the number really is. Do we, based on the 2020 census,
The latest census data is like 1,574 if I'm referencing the compensation study correctly.
whoa, really?
Yes.
So it's
It
dropped.
dropped.
How the heck did that happen?
I think, my personal opinion as a planner
Empty nester.
is that you have a lot
Empty
of
nest, I was
families that
thinking that.
downsize because their kids moved out and people retired here and not left yet. And what we're gonna see in the next couple of years is that those people are gonna leave and young families
I
are.
also don't believe in the census.
I can relate to that. Okay. So we have how many households? 660 roughly?
621 parcels, 2 multi-family units, and 74 commercial parcels.
So what's the total?
I'm sorry, and then we have parcel, we have to count HOA areas of population. Total parcels, we have 734. Taxable parcels are.
You're looking for residential
Yeah,
units?
residential, what part, residential 621.
621,
Yes.
okay. I digress, but I raised a question in my mind from a tax perspective. All right, so Matt, I think this was really good. The second paragraph, you talk about, a dynamic economic landscape that serves residents and attracts visitors throughout Prince William
Mhm.
County. Do we want to limit ourselves to just that, or do we Prince William County and beyond?
I actually had
And
that.
regionally?
And beyond, I had.
And beyond. And beyond. And
Yeah,
beyond.
or whatever.
Maybe and regionally?
Well, that sounds more plainer speak.
Beyond sounds a little Toy Story.
And do you need- I was thinking the same thing when you said.
That's my favorite.
And then do you need the from after visitors?
Do we need under internal stakeholders, page 101? I'm assuming it also includes the liaisons because you've got ARB. I mean, and we are council members, so it really could be redundant, right? You would think.
Yeah, I mean, I list below the town council and liaison assignments, but yes, we can make that more specific.
Yep, town manager or their designee will serve as a central coordination. Love that. So I wrote a note here, metrics of success and how we measure it. I see further on, you talk about feedback mechanism. So any thoughts on what kind of metrics you might want to consider?
So I think you could look at metrics of success in a few different ways. And one of the things that my head goes to immediately is, because I did think about this a little bit, and I think we talked a little bit about with Emily and was it's, okay, let's look at our metric of success, the number of interactions that we get on our social media, the increase in the number of likes to our page or followers. Is it are we going to set goals for getting, X number of people to download and sign up for our app? It became, as I dug more into the specific metrics of success on this, I felt it was becoming more of a burden on staff to be able to track what those metrics would be. And to kind of say, okay, and as a government agency, were we, how important was it to get into, the metrics around, social media likes or impressions and things like that. And then in reviewing some other local community who do publish communication plans, there wasn't really anything in there about that. I didn't see it in any other neighboring communities' plans. So I chose not to go there.
Okay.
But you're not wrong,
Yeah.
and you're right. I do kind of specifically have it in like the feedback mechanisms to say, let's, we should be reviewing this, and again, admittedly, it's a little more subjective in nature.
Yeah, I was going to say more qualitative.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's no question.
Okay, all right.
And we may, the nice part that I think about this is that I do view it as a living document. And if we, we may look at this next year and say it needs to be amended. And maybe we do put metrics in at that point in time because we've learned a little bit more.
One thought that we could do is we could have an appendix where we say, like, the day this gets approved, this is our baseline of what our interactions are. And it's just an appendix to show, this is where we started, and maybe when we evaluate it, we can show some growth. And it might not necessarily be a hard metric that says you're doing great because you increased 100%, but it at least to show growth or a decline.
Right. Yeah, good point. All right, well, I'll leave you to that. Core message themes, page 103. Those all 6 are excellent. Did we want to think about including fiscal responsibility and adhere to best practices and financial methods? Or is that not?
This is, to me, not that we shouldn't, we definitely should. Yeah, this thing, let me work on the wording on how we do that in a communication context.
All right, thank you. And so, continuing on the same page, bless you. We've got a lot of noise out there, right? You've got a lot of competing social media and apps, and you've got other municipalities like the county and Virginia Emergency Management and things like that. To what extent are we going to overlap in your mind with those other agencies and informational outlets? And is it going to be too much, I wonder? Just a thought.
There will be some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I always err on the side of more communication versus less.
Yeah. I think about
people
saturation.
follow different things. People see they follow different things, or they want to have it in their format. They might be Instagram followers versus Facebook. They might be on the app, but don't some people don't want to have something. Some people are very much still. I have a neighbor who called me tonight, and he's the just come and knock on my door and tell me everything. It's he doesn't even want to read the paper. It's just, so I think it's a understanding that people communicate and consume information in a lot of different ways,
Right.
but err on the side of over communication.
Right. Yeah. My only concern was saturation, but I get it. I understand. When we talk about on page 105 and 106, it's just a little bugaboo of mine. When we talk about digital media, would it be okay to move up My Haymarket app just so it's more prominent? Because that is something that I really utilize all the time. And it's a great tool. And I was very surprised and happy to hear that some people at our HOA meeting are actually got it. And by the end of the evening, everybody had it. I don't know. That's just nitpicking.
We can move it up to 1 or 2. I'd probably move it to 2 since we do say the website is the primary one.
Right.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. Who has access to the content calendar? On page 108. I love the content strategy. I think that's great. I got a big good and check mark there.
I think the intent is to have Julia manage that, all right, along with Emily.
So then that's going to be the town event planner, or is that?
Yes.
Events coordinator.
Events coordinator.
It's kind of a living document she already has, and then we touch base on it pretty much.
Okay, great. Super. So regional coordination, like that gets back to the, all the different agencies, right? Prince William, Emergency Management, VDEM, VDOT, blah, blah, blah. What about others like state and county and elected officials? Should we include them as well on our contact list?
I think we do, and Chief left now, so I kind of would have yielded to him. But I kind of, I did a little bit of an over summary on that of just saying, by saying state and federal agencies. I can work with Chief to kind of identify the more specifics if desired.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, but that's up to council. Page 110,
110.
under regional coordination.
Can I ask that you kind of clarify like when that might be applicable? I just, what
Well,
he has listed
I
makes sense.
sometimes see tweets, Instagrams, and other messaging from my elected officials, my delegate, my senator, and sometimes my supervisor.
So you want us to share what kind of, like what would trigger us alerting them specifically, like reaching out to them directly, I guess?
Note that, this is emergencies.
So for the emergencies.
So that they can inform others. We have a
Okay.
wider berth,
Okay.
right? Isn't that the whole idea about communicating emergency information?
It does, yes. And it's about, to your point, it's about coordination. It's about making sure that we have we're not saying one thing and the county saying something else, and then the federal government saying something else in an emergency.
Right.
It's about, and I think Chief does a very good job of this, of sharing information. A great example is whenever we have a severe weather event, I know that the Haymarket Police are always posting about that. They're posting and saying, hey, everybody be aware about that, and they're relying on information that they're getting from either state or national agencies or organizations.
Right. Yeah, just food for thought.
I think you covered that with relevant.
I did, yeah. I think we could probably maybe do a little bit more specific there, and I'll work with Chief and see if there's a couple other specific examples we can put in.
Okay,
That's not a
so,
problem.
thank you. I appreciate that. Page 111. Under the feedback mechanism, we talk about all feedback will be reviewed regularly by town leadership and staff. So who's the leadership? Is that council? Is that mayor, vice mayor?
That's a good point. Mayor, council members, and staff.
Okay. I mean, not that I want to.
No, that's a good point. That's a good catch.
To uphold these standards, page 114, all staff, elected officials, and appointed board and commission members will receive training on FOIA compliance. All right, and my only question is that already required by statute? We should be doing that regardless, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, but that's good to mention that. So this way it explains to anybody else reading it how we're going to operate.
Correct.
Especially with legal and ethical considerations, so. And under conclusion, nope, that's it. That's all I have. Other than, my only question would be, is there, in your mind, do you envision some kind of a table or checklist of who would do what?
I started to create one.
Okay, all right.
Version 2?
Version 2, got it. Okay, nope, just my thoughts. I just wanted to share them. Thank you, Ken.
Ken, anything from you?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I loved reading this communications plan. I know it's been a long thing in the making, so I really appreciate the time and energy that you, Mayor, and our staff took to create this. It read beautifully. You guys did a really great job. I appreciated you highlighting things like all internal stakeholders should receive training on effective communication practice and proper use of communication tools. On page 101, I appreciate the intention of ensuring we're all educated and on the same page. And I appreciate you calling that out. I love the idea of the shared calendars and cross-departmental updates, like the cohesion there. I appreciate that. I also really appreciated the core message themes. I saw a lot of opportunities in the communication plan where my role may be able to be really helpful and support this effort. So I'm really looking forward to, council approving this and getting this underway. And so we can go in the directions of all these wonderful ways that you've encouraged. I also loved the direct engagement, much like your neighbor, the face-to-face communication. It goes a long way, and I think that that's somewhere that this council could probably improve upon as a whole. Maybe just getting out there with our constituents a bit more intentionally and organized through ourselves, as not just a neighbor, but as the elected representative. I think that'd be really great. There was something I had a question about, but Councilman Casanello covered a lot of it. For the periodic evaluations, how often were you imagining that happens? Because I know we talked about the methodologies of collecting it. Just, is there going to be like a quarterly check-in, or is there some kind of?
I think I had it more annual.
Okay.
At this point, but I was thinking of it more being on an annual basis.
I can see annual being appropriate because the different seasons bring different needs and events and engagement. So I think
It gives us a
annually makes
year of
sense.
experience as well, especially as we talk about a lot of the things we do, especially with our community outreach.
Yeah.
thing, is very seasonal in nature.
Yeah. Yep. And I really do appreciate you going through and noting the HOAs and everything and having that available to all of us.
That was all staff.
Thanks, staff. Good job. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Anything? Councilman Vick?
Yes, just quick. Thank you for putting all this. It just makes the communication easier and everybody to have. I just have one question just for, and this may not be for everything, but for like people, we have a lot of different ethnicities. So is there a way for us, like, I think on page 103 and 109, it's all like, I think it's all communication crisis, like even, flu outbreak or stuff like that. Do we have avenues for that, for Spanish speaking, for, just someone who does not speak English or read English as their first way? Is there a way that we can get that out there for them? I don't know if that's. I know.
I have not seen anything where we've been and done anything in multiple languages.
Printed communication, we have not. We do have resources in town hall where we can get translation help, but beyond that, no.
Okay.
We could have better services around that. I would have to think about how.
Yeah, just something to look into, just in case, but just in crises and stuff like that. Just wanna.
I'll double check with Chief, but I know.
Look at that.
We share Prince William stuff. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure that like they have the language chief.
Prince William does.
Okay. Even if we.
They're doing the best shot.
Yay.
Thanks for joining us, sir. Yeah, no, I just had a question in regards of like communication for crisis or just different disasters and things like that on page 103 and 109 with the different ethnicities out here. Is there a way for us to better communicate those kind of alerts or events to the residents? Or I know we were talking about Prince William was one way of doing that. But I don't know if you have any, you would have the most insight of how to move forward with that.
Obviously, we have our alerts that we use for mass notification or instantaneous notification if it rises to that level, like the electric pole that was out, or a crash that's going to be blocking traffic or something like that. And of course, then we also use social media to back that up as well. Prince William has their alert system, which they obviously have several, many more subscribers than we do. And so they will double down on anything that we need or we send to them. Now, as far as meeting different demographics, I cannot answer that question. I think we would have to first find out how we can do it. And then second of all, find out what demographics we actually need to broach and how to approach them and how to get them engaged into the notification platform that we choose to use or are able to use. So it'd be a few different steps. I really can't answer your question on how to, but I can address it and find out and bring back some options, whatever would be out there.
That would be big. That would be huge. I know it's a big task. I don't want to put too much on your plate because I know it's already
Oh, man,
full.
keep it on. It's all good.
Thank you, sir.
No worries. We'll look into it for you.
Councilman Leon.
Okay. So on page 113, data protection and privacy, right? So what we have in there, is that some sort of an aspiration, or is that actually something that we're currently doing when it comes to adhering to privacy laws and also best practices? I just want to make sure that, I don't know if that's true, right? Currently, in something that we're doing.
Here's what I'll say. I did not look at it from a true cybersecurity perspective to put in place what the individual practices are in place, as far as how we putting cryptological keys or anything like that on anything. So I didn't cite anything specific there other than just really we're using best practices to protect personal information. I've got confidence that our staff is protecting PII. We've got clean desk policies and things like that, to make sure that we're not doing anything inappropriate from an information sharing perspective.
And also, there's a reference of privacy laws, right?
There are.
Do we even have an understanding of what the privacy laws entail in relation to personal information? So something that we need to look into, right? It might be, these things might not be in place. That's what I'm trying.
I think there is probably a lot of room for improvement on that.
Yeah.
As far as I think for all of us, is to be going through some of that, and that is certainly there are a lot of things coming out. I think there's more privacy laws that are going to be coming out very soon that are going to really impact us.
Yeah,
as
there's
well.
at the federal level, state level. I think Virginia now has a privacy law.
Virginia does now have a
Yeah.
privacy law.
So-
It's, similar. California's is still the strongest, and generally what businesses in the United States
We shouldn't be. We
comply
shouldn't
with.
be processing Californian resident data, though. It's just Virginian for the most part.
No, but obviously, like
Yeah.
that seems to be the one that's most adopted because it's the strongest, and it actually, from a corporate perspective, I know it protects the company because they say they went to the strongest law, whatever state has the strongest law.
Yep. And on top of that, if we do need assistance, CISA offers assistance.
Does
Free.
CISA still exist? I
Yeah.
don't know. It does?
It does.
So far.
It does.
I think from the last VML meeting that we went to, I did bring a business card in, and I think I digitized it and gave it in my notes.
Okay.
But that's something we could always ask them to do an audit on us, or else help us assist us with coming up with best practice policies.
At least achieve compliance with applicable laws, right? Okay. Accessibility compliance, right? It says the town is committed to ensuring that all communications are accessible to individuals with disabilities and in accordance with ADA. Do we know that to be true? Do we?
If it is requested, yes, we can make provisions for that. As I understand it, it's if you're talking about somebody needing something in Braille, or something, somebody needs that we can accommodate a lot of that. So I'm not sure what level or degree, but yes, there are some things that are in place that we're required by state law to do that. and federal.
And I know we've been thinking about, one of the things was the redesign of the website, right? If I'm not mistaken, in order to make it more accessible, there are certain requirements that we need to take into consideration.
Probably compliance, yes.
Yeah, okay. And the only thing is, hey, I know, being smart aleck here, when it comes to the non-discrimination cultural sensitivity, is that violate the presidential directive. I just want to make sure that we're not no, I'm just.
Oh, I wrote
I'm
this
just-
last year.
Yeah.
The
The EO, executive order, I should say, right? But that's all I have. But Matt, thank you, much
Okay.
appreciated.
No,
Yeah.
they're
All the
great
time.
points.
For all of your effort and hard work in putting this together.
All right, I took notes on here. I know there were a few comments, so what I'll do is, Kim, I'll get these to you over the next couple of days so we can include this in the packet for next week as well. All right, and hopefully we can do a quick approval on this then. All right, let's move on to go back to our budget. Let's get my paperwork out. So Roberto, thanks for in our last meeting. Thank you for summarizing all the, giving us a summary on the expenses. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I'm gonna, because I haven't started with him today, I'm gonna start with Councilman Baker. If he wants to bring anything in.
Here we go. Sorry, I have my notes. A little bit more Roberto. So with the, sorry, could you explain with the, because I know we only have so much income coming in. Can you, I think you mentioned like the cigarette tax coming down and like the business licensing is also down. Is that just kind of an unknown, or is it something we plan for, or something that we need to adjust for?
So are you talking about on the revenue side?
Yes.
Okay. Cigarette tax, we're part of the cigarette tax board, who collect, basically the commissioners, they're in charge of collecting the tax revenues for cigarettes within the town jurisdiction. There was a trend that was going down, but you can also see we ended up also going over. After COVID, it kind of threw everything off. Now though, it's still unknown if it's going to go back down or up. They always try to say it could probably decrease just because we're thinking it'll go back to pre-COVID times, especially now with people going into more of a healthy living lifestyle. There was a legislative that didn't pass, but they're trying to also, every year they try to get the vape to be part of this tax as well. Right now, currently, that's not taxed at the cigarette taxable. So that's something that I will have a meeting in June. We have our annual meeting with the cigarette tax board that I'll be attending, and they'll kind of give us more of a forecasting of what they see or what they think it's going to happen for the remainder of the year. They run on a regular calendar, so they tend to do year meetings. As far as the business license tax, the reason why that will potentially slow down a bit is because currently right now we're collecting on contractors that are working in town. They're starting to finish off those projects, as well as some of these homes. Pulte and D.R. Horton had on-site sales, so that we collected not only for the construction of it, but also the work that was done there, but also for the sales of the homes. So that was something that some of it make, unless new homes are sold, that I don't believe there's any new homes coming up. I think there's a few, but not to the magnitude that we had of there. So that will slowly decrease, but then it's also going to be offset by the additional businesses that are now going to be fully functioning for the year, next fiscal year. Because next fiscal year, what we collect on is for businesses from January 1st of 2025 to December 31st, 2025. So that's where they'll be liable for taxes.
Okay, I'm just new, so I'm trying to.
Yeah,
figure,
no, of course.
And
No,
I think I need to schedule more meetings. But no, I think that's it for me.
Yeah,
That
and,
was just
and we also have more professional businesses have come in who are at 30 cents versus like obviously our restaurants are probably the lowest at 10 cents per 100 since they already pay meals tax monthly. Retail is like 15 cents per 100. Yeah, and in real estate and professional services is doctors. Anything that requires a certificate or degree, those are considered professional. Finance advisors as well. They're taxed at a higher rate.
Okay.
And we've had a few of them coming in now, especially at Crossroads that would, you'd be surprised how quickly that jumps up with them. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Who would like to go next?
You can go.
Councilman Biani.
All right, so Roberto, again, I don't know if my math is correct. So what I was trying to do is compare the differences or the changes, proposed changes on the income side and compared it against the expense, right? The way I did that is I added up on the income side all the differences, right? Except I didn't take into consideration the reserve funds and the ARPA, because those are one-time kind of thing, right? It's not from organic growth, if you agree with me, right? And then I compared that against the expenses, and on the expenses side, what I did is I added up all the increases, but I did not discount the decreases. And the reason, I don't know if it makes sense, the reason I did that is because the increases at the end of the day are increase in spending, right? But the decreases in spending doesn't translate into additional revenue, right? We're just deciding to spend less in comparison to the previous budget. So and again, this is something that maybe you can take a look into. Again, based on my calculation, it looks like the expenses are outpacing the income. Just looking at the differences, from last year to this year, fiscal year. Meaning, does that make sense what I did?
So yeah, the expenses are increasing versus this year, from this year to the proposed year.
Yeah, the increases in the expenses are in excess of the increases in income for this proposed budget fiscal year. That's what again, that being said, right, there are some things that going to make a difference. For example, one of the things, the large spending as of right now, based on what I see here, is for the security system. That was, what was it, 134,000, right? 134,977. And again, I don't know if that's going to be true, right? If we do move forward with that spending, right, the $135,000, and again, based on my calculation, the expenses exceed the income, just looking at when you're looking at the differences from from last budget period to this budget period. And again, this is based on my calculation. That doesn't mean that we're going to end up with a deficit, right? It's just that I was trying to see if the increases in the income are sufficient enough to cover the increases on the expense side. That's all I was trying to do. Okay. Again, you can look into that and let me know if I'm wrong. The other thing, that I wanted, I asked about the surplus, right? So I think for 2024, we had a surplus of $1,090,000 or so. For 2023, we had $670,000, right? So considering that we've been running such a surplus, right? I'm just trying to understand what the big deal is in minimizing the increase in real estate taxes.
That's a great question. You haven't executed any projects. The past 2-3 years, council has not made a moves on any of the bigger project ticket items. This current budget, you guys are executing projects. You'll quickly see how that money is depleted within quarters. The 2020 and 2021, you guys were restructuring the police department. You guys took over a department that you guys had to restructure. You weren't on that council just yet, But you can see kind of where it was on par, where it was kind of at a more sustainable, at 288 to 200,000. But that was due to also cutting back on expenses, but in the other sense as well too, we spent money on rebranding the police department, getting a new chief, getting a whole new department, increasing wages, market adjustments for that department. That had to be made in order to get people here, the right people here. The following year, 2022, 2023, no big major projects were done. So when you do see these surpluses, we do have surpluses, but that is due to the fact that we haven't addressed the big projects. We've been just holding off on stuff. So I think to see that, it does look like we have a surplus, but it is a surplus. But I'm thinking more, and we've had this conversation at the liaison where we're thinking about not just this year, next year, we're thinking about the next 5 years. As you know, the debt obligation they were about to pay off, I believe Councilman Passano, correct me if I'm wrong, was from 2012 is when it was refinanced with SunTrust. Before that. Right, and 13 years later, we're still paying it. We're just going to finish paying it. So, you know, the thought that, you know, right now we do have a surplus, that's great, but we know that some of these funds are one-time funds. We're not going to get another batch of ARPA. We're not going to get proffers. I mean, that could also, if we don't, how much more can we develop the town, you know? And obviously when develop the town, residentials are the most costly to sustain, you know, in a town.
Okay.
So yeah, to address that, we do have surpluses, but that is mainly due to not addressing the bigger projects of ticket items, just holding off on them.
Okay, you mentioned something that I think is important to take into consideration, right? You made a valid point, right? So some of, you know, had we not had ARPA, right, these surpluses would have been less.
Correct.
Correct, okay.
Because every time we do use the funds, and this is going back to why I'm going to try to keep it cleaner going forward by having a separate other income budget, because in prior years, we were moving funds over that were a pass-through. Essentially, 500,000 was being brought in from the ARPA account, but 500,000 was going right back out.
Okay. And how much in total did we get ARPA funds?
1.7 million.
1.7. So where are we? What is the balance right now?
Currently, right now, I would, give me 1 minute. Currently, right now, we're projected to, once these projects are done, to have 910 left.
910. So we've used up about $800,000.
And the main projects, and I'm saying allocated because we had to allocate for, with the contingency, 836,586 for the park sidewalk and 111,749 for the demolition of the home.
Okay. Is it possible for you to give us a number in terms of exact ARPA fund expenditures? I don't know when we started expending the ARPA funds. Was it what, 2022, 23, 24?
No, it was this year. You guys, this is the first project you
This is
guys are
the
using.
first.
This is the first project you guys are using money. And that's kind of my point too. Once you start beginning to work on these projects, I believe if you recall the benchmark report, one of the scenarios was if we did 600,000 in cash, meaning like use cash in hand, and then the rest goes into debt. I mean, I would suggest for the town to look into using the ARPA or go into reserves. So that you depleted almost, you know, a little bit over $500,000 there. So that surplus that you're talking about quickly goes. And that's my concern, is that we keep reducing the tax rate, but we're not thinking ahead of 5 to 10 years or 13 years where we're still paying that debt. You know, we have to maintain some kind of consistency, because all the other revenue sources are economy based. We saw it during COVID a little bit. We were concerned. Obviously, what's going on now to COVID is a different, you know, situation. But even further, that 5 to 10 years down the road, I just don't want to be in the town or the board or anyone to be in a position where I have some peers that are increasing tax rates currently because they have to, because they depend on other federal funds that they may not have, or because they have plateaued on their real estate or other sources of income, and they're looking to increase their real estate.
If I had to make an assumption, we are in a better financial standing than possibly, right?
Yep.
But is this, am I correct, currently, as of March 24th, we are projected to have a surplus of 378,466. Is that correct? Am I looking at that correctly?
As of March 24th, we are positive, yes.
Positive, okay.
And to address kind of earlier, one of my jobs with the town manager is definitely maintain that we're not overspending. And I think we've proven that year after year. So yes, currently.
All right, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Councilman Passanel.
No?
Mine's minimal.
Go ahead.
Councilman Larson.
Okay, yeah, this is more or less nitpicking, but the two things that I know are coming up that is an unknown, and I don't see any growth in, is legal fees and convention fees and lodging. I'm assuming until we really nail down the policy, that's kind of up in the air. But I don't see any type of speculated growth in that, in the two numbers from last year to the projected year.
That is correct, sir. So I don't know which one exactly, but I'll talk to the two that I could think of. On the administrative side, with our TM not being able to attend some of these meetings, we don't know what that truly will cost. I know I myself plan on attending some, but as of right now, I think the number we have should suffice for the planned educational stuff. The council side, I left it there because I think that is part of the discussion, how council is going to handle their education abilities and participation on these events. This current year was the first year that I've had, it's a great thing, positive thing that a lot of the council members wanted to join and participate. But that's an unknown. Obviously, we could talk about it more. I just don't know. I didn't want to give you a number without really knowing, at least on the council side. As far as the administration side, I feel confident with that number. We truly haven't ever exceeded. But then again, we've also never had the ability until now to be able to attend these conferences and any educational meetings with this council. The PD side, that is something again that the chief did look into his own budget. So the number that you presented there, he can speak on, but I feel like he was confident enough to give it to me then. So that's the reason why we haven't adjusted those numbers as of now. As far as council, we, try to, some of the questions we have with our legal team are items that I'm able to save and reuse, templates, leases, items like that. So those are the type of things that Emily and I try to be better on. Having that everything funneled through the town manager has also helped with keeping costs down when she needs to talk to them, weekly phone calls. Again, some of the bigger ticket items, which are the reviews of bond reviews, those are all passed on to the developer as well. So that's another reason why that kind of saves us some monies as well there too. But we could take a look at it if you guys want to increase it, reduce it. I like to have that number there just because we don't know. And I think this year we've kind of had some situations where we unexpectedly had to use them.
It's minimal money when you really look at our budget, but for some strange reason, I had this feeling that our legal fees are going to increase. And I would like to make sure that we at least have a buffer in there.
Well, I do know that our town manager confirmed that the rates won't change for this coming year.
They won't?
They will stay flat.
Okay.
So that's another reason why too. Just gauging on some of the stuff we've used them on, one-offs or some of the templates we now are able to reuse. I've saved us some time too.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. Yeah, go for it. I got a couple questions like you.
Okay. So I can vouch for the fact that staff has done an incredible job since 2020 in I'm not going to use the word conservative. I'm going to use the word being fiscally responsible. Overall, there might be a couple disagreements, but pretty much, I think that was one of our goals when we came in 2020 is to, empower the staff to do what needs to be done and to use their skill set going forward. So I just wanted to put that out there in front. What I would like to do, and I'm glad you talked about conventions and education and stuff. Those are some of the areas, whether it's council or staff. I think we should take a look at that. And well, one of the things I think we talked about previously was developing a policy. And without having a policy, it's very hard to target where we can maybe generate some savings.
I do have a draft of it ready.
Okay, that would be helpful, I think. If we could have that, because then we could target and budget better. Because, depending on the convention and education and the meals, lodging and mileage, that follows, right? It's like what you do with your increased salaries, all your fringe. One of the things I would propose is that we examine and investigate better ways of training and education, perhaps virtually, perhaps here on site. If we can arrange it, there may be ways that we can bring other communities in, municipalities, and host an event perhaps and have the training here. And, they can help pay for that fee. But I think we got to think outside of the box a little bit to try to make some savings. And that goes for council, that goes for everybody. I think if we could take a look at that, I'd appreciate that. And so that was the virtual meetings. So we talked about the legal, and thank you for that. I'm not sure where you're getting your fear about possible increases, but I'm not going to dispute that. Under our, let's see, public safety, chief.
Sure.
311-0040, annual dues and subscriptions. Is that the one? No, office supplies, that's it. So there's to account for PD printer lease and printing used to be carried under admin. I don't know if that's your question, it might be staff's. Is there a corresponding offset for the admin side for this increase to the chief?
Which one's it on?
Annual office supplies, 311-0041, page 4 of 7. Just take a look at that.
And so you're wondering if we offset it on our side?
Yes.
Instead? If we did, I would propose that any offset money would go towards the printing of our newsletter.
So that's not budgeted for other ways?
It is, but we're looking at a modification, so I would just kind of move it into printing in a different format.
If you could show me that, that would be great. Chief, with gas prices down, do we need to carry that much, do you think?
That was definitely one of the ones I looked at, and we look at that every year and refer to trends and different things. And I decided that, at the time when I presented it, that it was best to be left alone. I know that we're doing better off right now than we had planned to during the current budget. But that has been such a volatile price over the years from when I started here up until today. And as a matter of fact, I think it was down to 260 something up my way. And today it's at 315 in a matter of just a couple of weeks.
So you think it's still pretty volatile?
Yeah, I do. And I will say this, that, some of the references that we look at when I'm deciding on that number have been really off the last couple of years. I mean, it's peer reviewed stuff, but it's still somebody looking at a crystal ball and current trends and marketing and things like that. We could drop off some money there, and in your last, what you said about savings and looking for places, that's always one of those places you want to look to. But it's just so unpredictable. So, we can discuss it out in finance a little bit. Might be a good thing to a little brainstorm on before we finalize. And
Put you guys in-
I can bring some numbers from the peer reviewed stuff just to show you what I was looking at. But again, dart in the board, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to put you in a position where then we're having to go back and amendment.
Well, we never want to do that, but you obviously don't want to create a stagnant line item where there's constantly an overage in,
Right. And that's kind of like where I'm coming from.
Right. Totally agree. And that's just good fiduciary responsibility right there, what you said. And I actually wrote that down, wrote it down right there when you said that, so that I can look at these things again. And that's one of those items, like I said, is very flux. You just don't know.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And then the cruisers, where are we funding? What part of money are we funding that from, Roberto? From the general fund.
Yeah, this is probably one of the first budgets, the proposed budget that's gonna be.
That is geared to totally be able to self-fund some of these projects.
So that should answer your question. Okay. Yep. All right. Good. Thank you. With respect to trash removal, again, I asked how many households, was it 621 that are being serviced? Is that the same number?
Yes.
621. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
I apologize, not 621, because some of those are just lots, but they're considered residential. I believe the number is more of 602 or 601 is what's actually being serviced.
Okay. All right. Good. Police department events, that's great. I'm glad to see you doing that. That's out of the, that 2/7 of the TOT. That's good. I made a little note of that. I'm just thinking about this blight mitigation, and I see you guys already proposed to reduce it 50%. I thought maybe it would have been higher on that previous version, but I guess I missed it because I thought they might be able to get some savings there. I mean, how many more kind of blighted properties do we have in town that we really think we might even use this money for?
I can think of a couple along Washington Street, but what ends up happening year after year is the staff bandwidth. We just don't have it to pursue the blight mitigation, and it does require a lot of legal steps. We have to be very thorough in our notification processes, the amount of time that the property owner has to respond, follow-up notifications, how we post it in newspapers, et cetera. And so a lot of times what we have found is that if we're able to make communication with the property owner, we get a lot further with the friendly conversations than we have going down the legal route of the violations. We've also done a lot better with partnering with Prince William County Property Code Enforcement and Neighborhood Services. So they've significantly helped us on some of the more minor issues. So that has been a great benefit. We can discuss if council wants to drop it lower. I mean, as you can see, we've not expended money out of this line item. I think we should leave a small amount there in the chance that these properties trigger a need for me to really go after one of them. But I could see us dropping it even down to 10,000. 10,000 would help us cover the initial attorney fees and notification requirements. And then typically in that process, when you go through it, you can recoup those fees, but it might be some time before you could recoup.
And cut the lawn maybe, or do something.
Right. Yeah, if we had to go in and we had to cut the grass, take care of weeds, tree maintenance, we would want a small pot of money for that as well.
Right. Well, I would suggest we take a look at that as a council and see if we can reduce that further as a means of trying to save some money. Earlier, I'm not going to get into it with Roberto today because it's late. I might disagree on some of the comments I heard earlier about, the surpluses and what have you. I mean, I would tend to think that, some of it had to do with not having the bandwidth and the resources, and some of it had to do with other things, but it might be helpful if we consider breaking out some of the CIP expenses to get a better sense of where that budget sits, but that's just for later. We can talk some more about that. But I think it would be very helpful, and I know we've talked about this before, it would be very helpful to see where all the pots of money are. And you remember we talked about that a few weeks ago. So everybody can understand exactly how much we have in hand, what's restricted, what's unrestricted, right? Remember we talked about, that may help us going forward a little bit better, right? Because we talk about it and it's almost ephemeral. We don't know where the dollars are. I mean, you can look at the balance sheet, but the balance sheet, doesn't really show you that. I mean, so for example, we have proffer funds and they're restricted to certain things, right? And then we have ARPA money that we have self-imposed for certain things. When we adopted the ARPA money, we put it into the general fund essentially, and because it was under a certain amount. But we've decided as a council that we would use it for certain investments, right? So you have proffer funds, you have ARPA funds, and then you also have the reserve.
Lockbox.
The lockbox. So I think it would be helpful for council to see what those numbers are and to see how much money we really have available. And I concur. I think if we're going to do this site plan, this town center site plan, right, because that's what it is, we may have to cobble together a mechanism, a funding mechanism. It's not just going to be all debt. Well, maybe it will be all debt. I don't know. I mean, we need to see what those numbers are. We need to get an update on what we're going to be doing and what the estimated costs are. I'm sure they have to be inflated compared to where they were. And the other concern is, and I think Marchant raised it in his citizens' time comments, is we're running up against the deadline, right? Because that site plan is perishable and we may have to do updates. And so that's another concern that we're being faced with if we want to get that done. So I digress, but I just rolled into it. So for now, I think it might be helpful to see that. And as of March 24th, you said the net was, right now, our net was over what, 378K? And that doesn't include B-Pol and the bank's tax too, which we have an expectation we might get some more money out of that, right? Perhaps.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, those are my comments for now, I think. If I have anything else, I wanted to put it out there. One last thing. So you're doing performance reviews right now, I think?
They completed.
Okay, good. And we're talking about a 2.5% COLA for everybody, which is in line essentially with Social Security is doing. Would it be possible to get a breakout of the performance review of up to 3% as a 1%, 2%, 3%, so we can see what that looks like from an expense standpoint?
We can work on that. And as council is aware, additional details that are going to be presented at 6 p.m. Next Monday will be a compensation study that has been completed to discuss a market analysis and market adjustment for the town employees. So that also will probably play a role into your budget numbers here. So you'll have a complete picture of that, and then we can get that additional requested data.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Vice Mayor. Okay. For tonight.
Just quick question. Councilman Passano, that 1, 2, and 3%, do you want to see that as the COLA or the merit?
As a merit.
As a merit, okay.
As a merit. No, I agree. I think the COLA makes a lot. Personally, I think the COLA makes a lot of sense. 2.5% is fair. I mean, roughly, right now, what are we running at inflation-wise? About 3.15% or something like that?
As of last week when I did it, I think it was 2.8. So it's changing. So
Yeah,
it's up and down. It was going down for a while, but it seems to be going up now again. So I think the last time even in my real estate scenario for the real estate, it's 2.8. That's the number I'm going with.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. Appreciate that.
Respond to one thing? if I may?
Sure, yeah.
So yes, I agree. I'm not, the comments that I made, I'm not trying to say that, the budget is not self-funded. It is self-funded. That's not what I was trying to say, right? What I was trying to say is, and again, I don't know if my calculations are correct. Seems like the increases in the expenses are higher than the increases in the income.
Right.
Which means that if that is true, we may end up with a surplus. It's just the surplus will be less, right?
lot
We are
less.
eating into the surplus, right?
Exactly.
That's what I was trying to say. That it is, we're not like the previous budget period. I think we transferred about 283,000 from reserves, right? We're not doing the same here. It's all self-funded. So, yeah.
Correct.
So I did have one question myself on the expenses. Just, I noticed that for health insurance, I know that we have, it's actually a 12% increase, but we do have a few employees, I think one on the police, two, and staff that have declined coverage. So therefore, we seem to be budgeting a lower amount and not budgeting for really that 12% increase. Do you feel that there's any risk in doing that we could have a staff turnover, or a situation might change where we would actually have to, and how would we account for that if somebody's personal situation changed and said, no, I do need to take that coverage?
I could pad the budget and say it's continue to do so, right? But I'm trying to present a budget that is true to what we currently have. If the need, it would be to similar when we were looking for police officers, or, we had to adjustment, then we will make those adjustments by working around some of the existing funds there, moving line item monies. But if council wishes to have a full what ifs on those, especially those two positions that completely have waived it, the other two positions have not taken the full benefit, meaning them and a partner versus a whole family package deal. But there's two employees that have completely waived it, and you're talking about $48,000 in insurance there that we're saving off the bat now by not doing so. But if council wishes for me to, budget for that, I'm more than happy to do so. It's just that for me and my perspective, it's something I know, at least for this coming year, they have already waived it. If they were to change it, that's a conversation we'll have to have then. But I'm confident that we can find those funds to support that.
Okay, I guess that's my question, is that we would go through a budget amendment.
Correct.
If those situations changed.
Correct.
I'm thinking of specifically, I don't know what everybody's personal situations are, but I'm thinking of massive layoffs in government and contractors, perhaps in our local communities, that could impact some staff, that, might be on a spouse's policy that suddenly have to transition over or something like that. That's why I'm thinking about it. If you're confident saying that, hey, there's other ways that we can do a budget amendment later and address it, and that's the smart way, I'm okay with that. I just wanted to call that out as a risk that I saw.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I'm very confident that we'll make it work. There's avenues that we can look to correct that. And obviously in the next budget, that'll be something that will be carried on.
Okay. One of my other questions was answered. No, I'm good. Was there anything further from anybody?
I just want to make one comment. Sorry, I know it's getting late, guys. I just want to, just thanks Roberto for putting this whole project, or for this whole budget together. And, I think Joe said it the best, that, you guys are conservatively, what was it? Fiscally responsible. So, since 2021, we haven't done anything really. And I'd like to get moving on, all these projects and everything you got set up to go. And this budget that you have is set up to get these infrastructures and everything set up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Beat me today.